Welcome to the April 25th edition to The Truth. We've moved into springtime all up and down the East Coast, and I hope you're having a wonderful Saturday. I hope you are going to postpone that golf game until 2 o'clock because that's when we'll be finished with The Truth on the John Fredericks Network. We might go a little bit longer on Rumble and Getter. You can carry us with you in your car or wherever you might be going. We're on the World Wide Web. You can listen to us on the app on your phone, or you can go to the Getter, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook app and listen to us there live. Come over to Getter right now, find the John Gordon Truth page and subscribe to us if you would on any of those social media pages. We have got so much to talk about this week. We're going to be talking about the disastrous Virginia redistricting that occurred earlier this week. We're going to be talking about the Southern Poverty Leadership Council. It's a sham. And John Kirikou, the ex-CIA agent, had a very good interview with PBD that we are going to play for you in a little bit. Ilhan Omar decided she's not worth $30 million after all. She's only worth $100,000. Oh my gosh, when is it going to end? And then Pete Hegseth talks about the Iran blockade of the Straits of Hormuz. Then we've got three great guests coming on today. Mike Arnold, he is an author. He's also the former mayor of a Texas town and a missionary. We're going to talk about Nigeria. He is revealing things that I never knew about Nigeria. I knew it was bad. I just didn't realize how bad. And then Bruce Wolf, he's a missionary, a pilot, and an author. We're going to talk about how America is returning to faith. And Veronica Kemeny, she's a 20-year Air Force veteran and hosts her own show called Veronica Live. She's had me on her show a couple of times, so we invited her onto The Truth today. We covered it all. I'm telling you, if you want a quick synopsis on where our country is today, not only domestically, but worldwide, stay tuned for that interview. Veronica is a smart lady. She's a patriot. She's a broadcaster and a journalist. I've just really enjoyed speaking with her. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. And our studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. In fact, Bone Frog Coffee is how I start my day every day. And you know, when the weather warms up, you need something that looks sharp and holds up. Bone Frog polo shirts are built for exactly that. Clean, simple, versatile, enough to go from work to weekend without missing a step. Whether you're heading into the office, out for the day, or keeping things casual, this is the kind of shirt you want in your wardrobe. So give them a look. They're at www.bonefrogcoffee.com/products. They've got men and women's polo shirts. And you know, when you do buy a merchandise from them, a large part of the profits go to helping Gold Star families and special team vets. We'll talk more about Bone Frog in a minute. Did we talk about Perfect Circle Renewable Energy as our sponsor, show sponsor? We'll talk about Perfect Circle later in the broadcast. They're a restaurant services company in Atlanta. All right, so Virginia. Oh, and let me not forget to recognize our producer, Anthony. He's right over here in the glass cage. He helps produce the show every week and has just done a great job of wiring this studio and getting it outfitted for our viewers, and has just done a phenomenal job. All right, Virginia redistricted last week, or they passed a constitutional amendment allowing them to redistrict. Now, there are a lot of problems with it. Let's start with the verbiage of the amendment that they put on the ballot. I'll read it for you now. Blow that thing up, Anthony, so I can see it. All right, good. Should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts to restore fairness? Oh no, let's don't restore fairness. Well, who would not vote for that? In the upcoming elections, while ensuring Virginia's standard redistricting process resumes for all future redistricting after 2030's census. In other words, we're going to cheat now and correct it later. Nobody's buying it. Why? Let's look at the map. Before redistricting, Democrats had 6 seats. Fairfax County up here and these blue districts right here. Republicans enjoyed 5 seats, including Norfolk and the coastal areas, the middle of the state, and then this very red rural area here. So now, after this amendment, if it's allowed to stand, all of this eastern half of the state becomes blue. The western, southwestern part is red. The seats go from 6 Democrats to 10, 5 Republicans to 1. So here we had nearly 50% of the representation. Now we have 9% of the representation. It is a travesty. A judge ruled that the ballot amendment was unlawful. You can start with the text that I read you at the beginning of the broadcast. That in itself is unlawful because it is totally misleading. I've got a high school education, college degree, and a graduate degree. I could not tell you what I'm voting for with the way that amendment is worded. I'm sure you're no different. So we can start with the inherent dishonesty in the way that it was worded, the lack of specificity in what you're voting for, and the fact that it is disenfranchising half of the state. That cannot stand. So here is what Donald Trump had to say about it.
Mr. President, I emailed the Virginia Department of Elections earlier today and asked them if they had seen any evidence of election tampering, of fraudulent mail ballots being cast in the Tuesday election, or if there was any evidence of non-citizens voting in that election. Why did you say that that election was rigged?
Well, you have mail-in ballots, and they found a lot of them at the end of the day.
They said that they have received no credible information related to those questions.
Well, I know you'd say that no matter what. You know, you've been saying that for years, and now they're finding out that the 2020 election was totally rigged. And when you look at what just, excuse me, how do you defend what just happened where your southern law, whatever it is, has given money to KKK? They're supposed to protect people, and they're paying all these people, crooked as can be, millions of dollars going all to all these people that they're supposed to be protecting from, but they're actually supporting them because they want to have companies that they can protect and because they want to rig elections. That was all a rigged election.
But
all of the things with Charlottesville, all of the stuff that they did, and you won't bring that up, but you'll bring up some nonsense. Let me tell you, the election we were winning all day long. It's a totally horrible situation. Hopefully the courts will overturn it, what they did in Virginia. You have a grossly incompetent governor. You had a very good governor, he did a good job. You know, all those companies that want to move into Virginia now, they want to move out and go to a different location. So that's my opinion. I believe it was a rigged election. Virginia's known for it. It was a rigged election. They had a lot of ballots, mail-in ballots. Anytime you have mail-in ballots, you have cheating.
So I think President Trump put that reporter right in her place where she needed to be. And it is a travesty. It is so frustrating that they keep this refrain without credible evidence. Oh, well, we were winning until the absentee ballots flooded in, and the absentee ballots flooded into Fairfax County, not the other counties, and it was just they were just enough to tip the ballot referendum over the line. I mean, you'd have to be an idiot to really believe that that was truthfully an honest election, just like some of my idiot friends who think that there was nothing wrong with 2020. I don't know what their problem is. I don't know whether it's Trump derangement syndrome or whether they just don't know or whether they don't want to know. It's a puzzle to me, but it doesn't matter. The fact is, I'm still going to be their friend. I might rub their nose in it if they listen to the show, but I don't do it privately when we're together. although unless I'm asked, in which case I'm happy to share my opinion. But my perspective, ladies and gentlemen, is that if we don't get these elections under control and we don't get honest, free elections, we're going to be reduced to a third world country. And the most damning consequence is that your children and your grandchildren are not going to be able to live in a free country. Because when they take your vote away, they've restricted your freedom to choose your government. The next thing that you're going to see is fascism like you've never experienced it since Anthony Fauci told you had to wear a mask and stand 6 feet apart. And that was out without any credible evidence, as his own email revealed. So we've got a lot of work to do to save this country, folks. Let's listen to PBD and John Kirikou on the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm not going to spend a lot of time personally talking about it. I'm going to let PBD and John Kirikou and their conversation make the points that I would make. Here they are.
SPLC, maybe at the beginning their reasoning was noble, and they've raised God knows how much money. We saw reports of who's given them money. George Clooney gave him money. Tim Cook gave him $1 million. I think Chase gave him money. Soros was speculated to have given him money. And then you see the 2019 Charity Watch. It's a leftist organization, gave SPLC an F. Current Affairs gave SPLC an outright fraud that uses fear to cause leftists to write checks. Liberal death penalty abolitionist Stephen Bright, I think is his name, refused to take an award from SPLC, said the SPLC has been run by a con man and a fraud. And then former SPLC employees in 2019 told the New Yorker that we were part of the con and we knew it. Like they knew they were doing this. What do you know about it, and why is this such a big deal of what happened?
Well, when I first saw the push notification that the SPLC was being indicted on felonies, multiple felonies,
yes,
my first thought was, oh, come on, we have nothing better to do. And then I clicked on it and I read the article and I said, oh, these are real crimes, real crimes. The kind of crimes where they're documentary. You either did it or you didn't do it. And if they've got documentary evidence that they did it, this could be the end of the SPLC.
Literally.
I think it could be.
Well, so I'm watching the opposition to see what their argument is. The current president reacted. I don't know if you saw his clip or not. He said, yeah, you know what? You know how they're spinning it? Here's what they're saying. They're saying this is so unfair because this was our way of paying informants to learn more about the organization.
I knew they were going to say that.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Like journalists who buy one share of stock so that they can go to the stock holders meeting and,
they're spinning it in a way to say, shame on them to do this. These are people that are doing great work. That was the guy who responded, claiming that's what they're doing in the past. So what do you think about that?
I think that is weak because what they're being accused of doing is giving money to the Ku Klux Klan, giving money to Nazi groups, laundering money. There are very clear laws, very specific laws about money laundering. You can't do it. You can't do it.
They're doing a great job. That is for certain, because if you consider that their job evidently is raising money, they've got a treasury of $786 million in assets. In 2024 alone, they raised $106 million. And now they've been caught. They've been outed. They're giving the money to the KKK. Now, you might ask yourself, why would they do that? I mean, isn't that the central question? They claim, they're just buying information. They were paying the money so they could get informants. But that's not it. That's a lie. You know what why they're paying that money? Because they're stoking the racial division that's in this country. They play it up every chance they get. And you know what? I think we're way past that. I've been on a number of interviews this week on different radio and television shows. We were on Lindell TV just yesterday, in fact. And I explained that I've worked in the inner city in Atlanta now for over 20 years. And we have a charity there, the Friends of English Avenue. I know many of the people who live in that neighborhood. Highest incidence of HIV per zip code in the country, per capita, obesity, diabetes, joblessness, illiteracy, homelessness, hopelessness. Every social crime you can imagine is there. But I'm here to tell you that I know the people that live there. They're very nice, warm, gentle, God-fearing people whom I genuinely love. Even the drug dealers and the prostitutes and the pimps are, I don't know how to characterize them. I don't even know who they are, but I know that I've encountered them. I've walked those streets and I've never felt in danger, even though danger is all over the neighborhood. But the people who live there are the victims of the danger and the victims of the crime and the prostitution and the drug dealing. They're not buying the drugs. People from outside of English Avenue are coming into the neighborhood to buy the drugs. And it's much better today than it was 10, 15 years ago. It was an open heroin marketplace, open air heroin marketplace where the commerce was conducted on the street corners. And you know what? The cops were afraid to come. So maybe it was just dumb, blind luck on my part that I never had an incident, but I've walked those streets for many years. But I did have an incident one Saturday afternoon. I had forgotten to pay our gardener, Jamaica. We have 2 urban farms in that neighborhood. And I told my wife that I had forgotten to pay Jamaica and I was going to ride down there and give him his money. So she said, well, I don't have anything to do. I'll ride with you. She rode with me. We got out of the car at our garden there on North Avenue at Lindsay Street. And got out of the car, left the motor running, put it in park, walked over and started talking to Jamaica. About a minute later, my wife said, John, you didn't put the car in park. And the car was rolling down the street. I said, oh my God. And so I lunged towards the car to try and put the brake on and put it in park before it got to the intersection. And the car just sped off. Just someone had jumped in and stolen my car. So I was the victim of a crime. I just wasn't the victim of a violent crime. The police officer who came took the report, and the head of the stolen vehicle division of the Atlanta Police Department just showed up fortuitously on the scene. And he said, well, Mr. Gordon, he said, I can promise you one thing. He said, I'm going to get you your car back. He said, I don't know what kind of shape it's going to be in when we get it back, but you're going to get it back. That was Saturday. Tuesday afternoon, the phone rang. It was that officer. And he said, Mr. Gordon, I told you I was going to get you your car back. He said, it's here in our police lot. You can come and get it. I said, well, is it in one piece? He said, I don't see a scratch on it. So we went down, we got the car back. And when I got in the car, I have never smelled the odor of marijuana like I did in my car. And I said, oh my God. And I asked the police officer, what am I going to do if I get pulled over for running a red light or speeding, and the officer comes up to my window and asks for my driver's license? He's going to throw me in handcuffs and haul me off for smoking weed while driving. And he said, well, here's my number. Just have him call me. So we drove the car home with the windows open. And that night we went out to dinner. And when we pulled into the car lot, I handed the valet the key, and he got in the car. And as he sat down in the driver's seat, he turned and looked at me and said, dude. Oh, Lord, it was pretty funny. But anyway, that's as bad as it ever got in English Avenue. But here's the point I'm trying to get to. I know the people who live there. I know the people who are ministers in the churches. I know the community leaders. And I'm here to tell you that the people who live there don't hate white people. And in fact, they're genuinely loving individuals. And it is 98% African American. I never felt uncomfortable or out of place in English Avenue or at the meetings, even when most of the time I'd be the only white guy in the room. Most of my discrimination was because more geared towards my age. But that was probably self-inflicted. The problem that we had when we were there wasn't with the residents. It was with the leadership. One person in particular told me that if we wanted to do business in English Avenue, that we had to pay her a consulting fee. And I'm like, we don't do that. We don't pay consulting fees, and we're not doing business in English Avenue. We're here to do charity and good work in English Avenue, and we did. So I've talked about it before, and we'll continue to share about it. But it was the leadership that stirred up the trouble. And I went to my friend, Ivory Young, the late Ivory Young, who was on the Atlanta City Council, who I was very good friends with. We had lunch together regularly, he and his wife. And I got to know them on a personal level, and I really enjoyed his friendship. And I said, Ivory, what am I doing wrong? Why are these people, not the residents, the neighborhood leadership, why are they pushing back on the work that we're trying to do? He said, oh, John, he said, those are the poverty pimps. They don't want the neighborhood to change. They want it to stay like it is. So they were constantly trying to stir up trouble. When we had a cleanup, they would try and undermine it. When we had a candlelight vigil for the deceased Katherine Johnston, which is the reason that we went there, they would try and schedule competitive events. Everything we tried to do, they would try and undermine. They were not successful. But it opened my eyes to the reality. It's not blacks and whites that don't like each other. It's not. Now, I'm sure you can find isolated instances, but for the most part, we want to love one another. I truly believe that. But it's the leadership, the frickin' Southern Poverty Law Center, that keep us racially divided. They're not working for racial harmony. They're working for the $786 million endowment that they've raised. They're in it for the Tim Cooks and the George Soroses and the George Clooneys that want to be so virtuous by helping an organization that lacks virtue. And now it has been proven. And I've sensed it for a long time. I've sensed it for a long time because the anecdotal information that I've received is so different from the news reports that I receive. So it just makes you wonder, what's going on here? Who's behind it? What's behind it? And what are the motives behind it? And I think the motives behind it, if there's not racial tension in our society, there is no $786 million endowment for the Southern Poverty Law Center. And was the late Jesse Jackson working for racial harmony, or was he working for himself? And that other little twerp that runs around New York all the time stirring up trouble, what's his name, Anthony? He's Jesse Jackson's smaller version. You know who I'm talking about. Huh? Al Sharpton. You think he wants us to get along? You think he's in it for pure motives? I don't believe it. I believe he's here to keep things stirred up so he can still go to corporations and bully them if they don't pay him money. That's what I suspect. That's what I believe. And that's what needs to stop. And that gets me to, almost gets me to my next point, Ilhan Omar. She put on her congressional financial disclosure, just like every congressman, their deadlines that they have to file. I think it's every 2 years when they file for re-election. I could be mistaken about that. But I believe these financial disclosures are coming in right now because they're all running for re-election, or many of them are, not all of them. 50 plus members of Congress have said they're not running again. We can talk about that later. But Ilhan Omar filed her disclosure and showed that she was worth between $25 and $30 million. Whoops. 4 or 5 years ago, she was worth negative 18,000. What happened? So people started talking about it. And then Nick Shirley showed up in Minneapolis and uncovered all of the fraud, millions upon millions upon millions of dollars of fraud. And Ilhan Omar's fingerprints were on a lot of it. So what happens this week? Oh, there was an accounting error. She's not worth 25 or $30 million. She's only worth 100,000. Wow. That's a big swing. I would imagine she's going to move out of her house into an apartment. It's laughable. You see, they're playing us for fools. Who in their right mind is going to believe that? Do we have a clip on it, Anthony? We got Ilhan Omar's net worth scandal. Let's roll tape.
Minnesota Democrat Ilhan Omar skipping a hearing used to examine her potential ties to a massive state fraud scheme, and now facing pressure from Republicans. As Tom Homan signals, the feds may get involved.
The whole file is being reviewed. A lot of smart people are on it. Stay tuned.
There you have it. And then a Lindell TV reporter stopped Ilhan Omar in the halls of Congress while she was waiting for an elevator. And let's see Ilhan Omar's contrite, humble response.
Congresswoman Omar, the last time I spoke to you, you said that I was stupid for asking you about your financial disclosure, but there's some discrepancies on there. Would you like to explain that? How did you make such a big mistake on it?
Absolutely, you're stupid for asking me anything.
I am?
Yes.
Well, what about the American people who are wondering how you made such a big
I have
mistake?
explained to the American people.
What's the explanation?
I have given them the explanation.
Do you want to tell our viewers? Because they're
I don't want to tell you jack
Oh.
How about that?
Okay.
Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Now, I would categorize her response and her demeanor as pure, unadulterated arrogance. She didn't say, oh, I made a mistake, or I owe you an explanation. She responded with profanity and hubris. And let me tell you, since the beginning of time, it's hubris that have brought down so many great leaders going back to the Roman Empire. So that's the one that will inevitably trip her up. It won't be the money. It will be her arrogance. It will be her defiance. And it would not disappoint me if they showed up with a warrant for her arrest and an indictment for criminal charges. If anyone deserves it, she does. But that gets me to a point that I've been wanting to express to you. As much as I love Donald Trump and his administration, where is the accountability? We have Charlie Kirk that was killed by an assassin's bullet. We've got what I've considered to be a corrupt FBI leading the investigation, and very serious questions about financial improprieties within Turning Point itself, and speculation about what role Israel may have played in Charlie's assassination. Now, I want to make it clear that those are allegations, but they're not unfounded allegations, okay? They're not unfounded. As far as financial improprieties within Turning Point, Charlie Kirk, 8 days before he was gunned down, wrote a memorandum installing a new chief operating officer of Turning Point and calling for a Doge-style audit. After he was killed, Erica Kirk canceled the audit. That does not compute for me. That raises more questions than it solves for me. I think that a magnifying glass is called for. We know that Israel was pressuring Charlie Kirk not to say anything that went against their interest. I think Charlie was loyal to the day he died to Israel, but he questioned the slaughter of human life, the taking of human life on a mass level in Gaza. It was troubling to his conscience as a Christian, not because of a bias for one side or the other, but just the sheer loss of human life. But they wanted none of it. They did not want to hear that. And several donors withdrew their support of Turning Point just before he was gunned down. It raises a question in my mind. Did Israel have a role in Charlie's assassination? Now I am a branded anti-Semite because I've asked what I consider to be a legitimate question. Let me make it clear. I am not accusing them. I am not suggesting that they did. I am suggesting that it warrants a very close look. Who were the other suspects? Could it have been the deep state? I don't think anybody could have pulled this off with the narrative and the series of things that have occurred without cover of our own government. That's why I don't trust the FBI to investigate. Now, one of our listeners, Dave, wrote me, and I told you I read our emails, and in response to similar comments I've made on the show, he says a full metal jacket would go right through, hitting something or someone behind him. If it was a soft jacketed bullet, there would have been a huge exit wound. It would have exited, but with massive tissue damage. And I've said, I'm not a gun guy. I'm a shotgun guy and I love to hunt, but I don't know rifles. All I know is what I've seen, what I've considered to be credible information that I've watched on YouTube, where people have recreated that 30-06 shot using different loads of ammunition, light loads, heavy loads. I don't even know what the difference between a full metal jacket is and a soft jacketed bullet. But obviously it has something to do with the velocity, impact, and the way that the bullet behaves once it strikes its target. But Dave says Charlie Kirk was killed, this is his opinion, his belief, by a small caliber bullet, possibly a subsonic .22 caliber. Now, I don't know. I mean, I've as I've shared with our listeners before, I resisted watching the video for the longest time. I just didn't want to see it. It's like the Zapruder film. It's 63 years later. I don't know how long the Zapruder film's been out. I think in the mid 70s. So let's just call it 55 years later. I still cringe and become revolted when I see President Kennedy reaching up to grab his throat, and I see his head exploding and the First Lady trying to retrieve brain matter. I mean, it's one of the most gruesome sights I've ever seen. And I didn't go looking for it. But you know it's ubiquitous. You can't turn on, in the last half a century, we can't turn on the TV, watch YouTube, or open a magazine without seeing it. Even to this day, it's continued to be replayed here and there. And so it was the same with Charlie. I was on YouTube. I was on X, and I was just kind of doing the equivalent of channel surfing. I was flipping through different reels, and there it was. I can't unsee it. And once I've seen it, I might as well look at it closer. And when I look at it closer, what I see is not someone that is reeling backwards from a high velocity 30-06 bullet, but I see his shirt actually expanding, coming towards the camera, away from his body. And then Charlie slumping over to his left with a small trail of blood. Dave says he thinks it's a .22 caliber, maybe. I wonder if it. I'm open to receiving information that it was the microphone that was an explosive device that someone triggered. The scene in and around and the circumstances leading up to Charlie's death do not make me believe that there was not some sort of a coordinated effort going on. Okay, call it a conspiracy. You see all the guardsmen, a lot of the security guards looking at their watches at about the same time. You see hand signals being given by one of the heads of security. You see an interview afterwards with the head of security, and I'm a pretty good judge of people. I just felt like the guy was lying through his teeth. Said that they couldn't fly drones because of the proximity to Salt Lake City and the airport traffic restrictions on drones. Yet hundreds of eyewitnesses have talked about drones flying over the venue. Well, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole on Charlie. This is what I'm saying. The atrocities continue to happen. President Kennedy, the Building 7 of the World Trade Center, Charlie Kirk, Butler, Pennsylvania. What else? It needs to stop. And it does not, Epstein, we know intelligence was involved in Kennedy's assassination, okay, the CIA. At this point in time, nobody denies that. Even John Kirikou, who came on The Truth a few weeks ago, acknowledged that the CIA had a hand in it. Nobody denies, really, nobody doesn't suspect, put it that way, that the CIA had something to do with Epstein. We just don't know the degree. It's pretty clear that Mossad clearly was involved. And speaking of Israel, the redacted documents, we are told, from the Kennedy files, that many of them, the redactions, refer to the state of Israel. So I'm not trying to paint them in a false light. I don't have an agenda. I'm not a Jew hater, so I'm sure I will be accused of. I love Donald Trump. I want to believe in Kash Patel. I'm sorry that Don Bongino left, and we really don't know why. Here's the point. Donald Trump promised transparency. Donald Trump promised accountability. In my view, we have received none of the above. We're making progress in some places. Russia, Russia, Russia. Kudos. 2020, I truly believe we're getting there. The FBI have those ballots from Georgia and from Arizona. I suspect that they already know what's in the inside. I suspect that we're going to get a report pretty late in the game, close to the midterms, when the Democrats don't have any backdoor to the Alamo or an opportunity to get their story straight. I think I'm sure, if I'm right, if my suspicion is correct, I am sure that the report is being written, rewritten, edited, polished, written again, and that it is on a time schedule that will favor President Trump and Republicans. But the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is it's not a lie. It will be proven fact, unlike Russia, unlike the Hunter Biden laptop, unlike all the lies that went along with the Biden administration, starting with the stolen election. But it will be timed to inflict maximum damage on the Democrats. And what is the matter with that? Because they did it, they've covered it up, they've lied about it. But along with that, I want to know, how much does our federal government pay media outlets in the United States? We know they paid Twitter, we know they paid Politico. We know we have reason to suspect that they paid Cox Media. According to one of the Cox heirs in an interview that he made, he highly inferred that. So who else? There's evidence that they paid the New York Times. Who else what other media outlets have been paid by the federal government, and for what? Who authorized the payments, and what was the amount? The American people deserve to know. So, Mr. President, you promised us transparency. You promised us accountability. And so far, you get a big fat F, a complete failing grade, a 0, because no one, not Ilhan Omar, not who took a shot at you, Mr. President, and Butler, not whoever killed Charlie Kirk, not who paid and facilitated, enabled Epstein, not one, not even your Russia villains. Not Hunter Biden, not Joe Biden, not Mayorkas or his attorney general, Merrick Garland, who could rather tell a lie than the truth. No one has done a perp walk. One of our listeners texted me yesterday and said, when is the accountability going to come? Because no one's been arrested. Now, we do know that there's an investigation ongoing right now in the Southern District of Florida involving John Brennan, and we think it's probably going to sweep in a whole lot of other people before it's over with. I'm hopeful that we can get accountability there, but I'm not terribly optimistic because, they tried to put Trump in jail, and I think they would have. And I think if he had gone to jail, they probably would not have protected him in jail. And I believe that there would be a pretty good likelihood that he would not be with us today had he been sent to jail. But when will the accountability come? It's time. It's time. And Russia, that might be the first fissure. 2020 might be the second. But we're due. The American people are demanding answers. Transparency, accountability. Give it to us. Give it to us, Mr. President. Give it to us, Kash Patel. And give it to us, Todd Blanche. And I've said on shows this week that I think that the lack of accountability may be very well behind why Pam Bondi is no longer Attorney General. And I did see in a press conference between Kash Patel and Todd Blanche this week, and I felt it was very encouraging, and I just hope we get results. All right, well, as I've said before, wars are easy to start, hard to finish. President Trump's learning that the hard way. Here is Pete Hegseth on the blockade in the Straits of Hormuz.
U.S. forces cracking down, conducting a maritime interdiction more than 2,000 miles from the Strait of Hormuz, boarding a sanctioned tanker ship transporting oil from Iran in the Indian Ocean. This coming as President Trump has a new warning for Iran over the strait.
I'll say this, every ship that the U.S. believes meets our criteria, either Iranian ships or to and from Iranian ports, has been turned around. As of this morning, 34 total. Non-Iranian vessels are allowed to transit, and many have, including overnight. Not only is the blockade growing, in fact, a second aircraft carrier will join the blockade in just a few days, but this growing blockade is also gone global. Just this week, we seized 2 Iranian dark fleet ships in the Indo-Pacific region that had left Iranian ports before the blockade went into effect. They thought they'd made it out just in time. They did not. We seized their sanctioned ships, and we will seize more. They're the ones who lay indiscriminate mines, who shoot at random ships, who killed 45,000 of their own people, innocent protesters in the course of weeks. Their own people. They are the bad actors. President Trump said it again yesterday. We have all the time in the world.
Well, I think the only thing I would have added to that is the 2 pages of atrocities of terrorism that they have committed over the last 50 years that I've read every week for the last 3 weeks now on the show. And to me, that is justification enough in and of itself. You know, people really, we believe that there is enriched uranium and that they're maybe on the verge of a nuclear weapon, but I don't think that the American people, all the American people, are not fully convinced. But the one thing that is not debatable are all the acts of terrorism that they've sponsored around the world for the last 50 years that have taken the lives of thousands of men and women, including our servicemen and women in this country. And so it is unpardonable, it is unjustifiable, and to me, those acts of aggression, several of them in and of themselves, like the taking of our embassy in Tehran in 1979 and taking 66 diplomats hostage for 444 days, that's provocation enough for a war with Iran. But it should have been done 50 years ago when it was hot and fresh on the memories of the American people, and people were really upset about it, not the least of which was Jimmy Carter, who had cost his election. But Ronald Reagan, who I loved him so much that we named a dog for him. One of the best dogs I've ever had, Reagan, was with us for 10 years. Beautiful black lab. I hunted with him all over the Southeast. I miss him to this day. Anyway, I'm just letting you know, this is not to bash the late, great President Reagan, but I do wish he had taken out Iran, or not taken them out, but punished them in a material way once we got the hostages freed. But the terrorism continued. They bombed the embassy in Beirut, killing dozens of people, including American servicemen and women. And then they bombed an Air Force base in Beirut. The death toll all combined was well over 1,000 people. I mean, when is enough enough? I think it's more than enough. So I applaud President Trump for doing this, but I also think that if he was being straight up with us. I think he was being more than optimistic. I think he was being naive and thinking that we were going to go in there and get them to come to their knees in a couple of weeks. Fact is, we've been there 2 months, and President Trump tells us that it's winding down, that they're coming to the table, that we're going to get peace. I'm kind of in the mode of trust but verify. Don't sell me, show me. And hopefully that will be the outcome in the not too distant future. But these people, you have to understand, you're not dealing with rational people. You're dealing with fanatical people. And they think that dying for the cause gets them into heaven. So they're not too worried about dying for the cause, evidently, because we have wiped out 3 levels of leadership. Never seen anything like that in the history of modern history of this nation. It always seemed to me we had a kind of a unwritten agreement in war that we weren't going to take out the other country's leadership, but boy, we sure did in this war, and that is unprecedented. Well, we're coming to you from West Palm Beach, Florida, from our new studio, as you know, and that is sponsored by Bone Frog Coffee. We come to you every week on the John Fredericks Radio Network, 10 cities, 24 AM and FM radio stations. And we also come to you on CDM Press. You can watch us right now on Rumble, Getter, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and what have I left off, Anthony? X.com. Just look for John Gordon Truth. And if you like us and you feel what would it be? If you want to subscribe, we would be grateful. About 2% of our radio listeners actually subscribe to our social media. If 50% of our radio listeners went right now to getter.com or rumble.com and subscribe to our channel, we would catapult into another strata in the podcasting social media world. We have a great radio audience. We're trying to build the audience on those social media platforms so we can have a better megaphone and reach more people. But as I said, the studio is sponsored by Bone Frog Coffee. I start my day every day with Bone Frog. If you're grinding through each day like I am, and you need the perfect kick without the jitters, grab some Bone Frog Coffee. It's veteran owned, founded by a Navy SEAL, Tim Cruikshank, as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Navy Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special operations. If you don't already know it, the Bone Frog emblem is a sacred symbol of the SEAL teams that represent those that have given their lives in combat, and is a reminder to the rest of us of the ultimate sacrifice of our freedoms and for our freedoms and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch roasted from top shelf Arabica beans. Is that even close, Anthony? Pretty close, he says. Smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Just think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families, aiming for $500,000 donated. Coffee with a cause? You betcha. That's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head over to bonefrog.coffee.com. So you can snag some K-Cups, some whole beans, or merchandise, like the shirt that we showed you earlier on in the broadcast. Maybe Anthony will even put it back up for us. There it is. They have them in men, women, small, medium, and large. Go to bonefrogcoffee.com, get your K-Cups, your whole beans, and your merchandise, and use the program code TRUTH. Start your day like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our veterans and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. Check them out right now at www.bonefrogcoffee.com. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. As you know, they're a restaurant services company in Atlanta, Georgia. They'll pick up your waste vegetable oil, refine it, and provide it to makers of biodiesel fuel. They also clean grease traps, vent hoods. They can sanitize the front of the house and the back of the house, as well as provide you containment and no spill containers for your waste oil. Go to www.pcrenergy.com and give them a call. They don't have automated attendants. They'll answer your call on the first ring, and if they don't, they'll call you right back. www.pcrenergy.com. All right, we got good interviews coming up for you here on the John Fredericks Media Network. I wonder how many people have gone to Getter or Rumble and subscribed to our channel. It's not too late. It's free, and it'll take less time than it took me to tell you about Bone Frog Coffee. So do us a teensy-weensy little favor if you feel inclined to do so. We'd be so grateful. And thank you for your email. Keep them coming. We read them, we think about them, we study them, we respond, and we appreciate it. Write to me, johngordontruth@gmail.com, and all of our past episodes are on johngordon.tv. All right, enough of the shameless self-promotion. Let's get to Mike Arnold. He's a former mayor of a small Texas town. He's a missionary and an author. He's going to open your eyes about Nigeria. Stay with us. Mike Arnold joins us on The Truth today. He says that Nigeria is the epicenter for radical Islam and the war for global order. I'm really surprised to hear that, frankly, Mike. Welcome to The Truth. How does Nigeria acclaim such notoriety as the epicenter for global order? I'm shocked.
Most people don't realize that Nigeria is the 6th largest nation on earth.
Wow.
And is on track by 2030 to be the 3rd largest nation on earth by 2050. By 2050, 1 in 13 human beings will be Nigerian. Their average age is just 18.2. So with the rest of the world aging and having the baby boom issue, Nigeria has the youth, and it's booming. It's also one of the top 5 members of OPEC. They have $1 trillion in mineral reserves, the minerals of the future, the lithium, the rare earth elements. And it's a very strategic location. They produce more films each year than Hollywood does. You've probably watched Nigerian movies on Netflix and didn't even know they came from Nigeria. And their music dominates the streaming charts. It's a very vibrant, fast-growing nation with a trajectory to be extremely influential in the future. The question is, which direction is that trajectory going to go? And there's a battle for the soul of the country right now. It was Michael Langley, the head of AFRICOM last year. General Langley, in front of Congress, said Nigeria is the epicenter for global terror today. But there's so much more than that going on. It's a most important nation on earth that most Americans can't find on a map.
Well, you are exactly right. I had to ask Anthony, who is, some people go to the internet for knowledge. I go to my producer, Anthony, and he said it was in Northwest Africa. Is that accurate?
It's west. It's west. It's the Gulf
West,
of Guinea,
west.
Where it's notched out. It sits right there in the corner of the Gulf of Guinea, and it's a large nation. It's actually about 1/4 of the population of the continent of Africa is in Nigeria.
Wow. And somebody who's made 16 trips there, you should know. So let me ask you, I mean, when you introduced Nigeria to us a moment ago, you laid out what sounds like a country that is based on capitalism, which would seem to be antithetical to a Muslim or a state that is grounded in Islam. Can you reconcile those differences for us?
Absolutely. And if you're familiar with the fictional country from the Marvel universe, Wakanda, which has this holographic image of this decrepit little country, but underneath it, it's like this vibrant civilization. Nigeria is the opposite of it. Nigeria is an Islamic regime, completely and totally, with the disguise of a secular democracy. Now, how can I say that? Going back to history, first of all, the founding of Nigeria, the core of it still today is the Sokoto Caliphate. It was the largest pre-colonial empire in Africa, built on jihad, built on genocide, built on slavery, the Sokoto Caliphate. And there's a reason Trump bombed Sokoto on Christmas Day. It was symbolic. That caliphate, when the British got control of that region, that was in the north. The south has been vibrant, Christian, English-speaking, very entrepreneurial. At one point in time, before it was destroyed, it was the fastest growing economic region on earth for 10 years running. So the South is a vibrant. That's what they put forward. The South, the Lagos, the entrepreneurial South, but the control of the nation is rigged so that the jihad caliphate controls it. Their constitution, which was written by a northern military dictator, a radical Islamist dictator, wrote their current constitution. It mentions Sharia and Islamic terms 165 times, and not one Christian term. The whole constitution and nation is jerry-rigged so that the control stays in the imams in the north, while all the resources, the oil, is in the south, so that it's all nationalized. The south gets none of the mineral wealth, none of the oil. They get the pollution, they get the corruption, while the jihad, genocide north controls the nation. And it controls it to this day. That's why it's the #1 nation on earth today for Christian genocide by a factor of 10. More than 125,000 Christians killed there in the last decade.
Well, who's doing it? Is it the government, or is it just radical terrorists that want to, quote, cleanse the nation, end quote?
Well, it's a mix of things. There's 4 primary drivers that I've been able to identify. First of all, the Chinese. So Nigeria, when you stand in Nigeria, a whole lot starts to make sense, because so many of these, it's like a petri dish. These global forces, nefarious forces, have been able to operate there with impunity for so long that they've overextended and they're very exposed. So the Chinese, according to the Nigerian government's own documentation, is looting upwards of $9 billion a year in minerals. And at least 10% of that goes to pay, it is documented, they pay rent to the jihadis. A lot of these villages, I was in the village of Bokos in 2024, a couple months after the Christmas massacre that happened there. 300 Christians hacked to death. And instead of Christians there, you see mounds of dirt where the Chinese came in and strip mined after the jihadis cleared out the area. That's not inconsistent. I mean, look at the maps of where the attacks are taking place. It overlays with the mineral maps. So the Chinese are enabling it, funding it. They pay the generals to mess up, turn away, and not intervene. And the 900 million plus more a year just from that one source flows to the capital. It buys a lot of silence. It buys a lot of complicity. At the same time, the leaders of the nation are fully in line with the ideology of the jihadis. Recent comments, the guy in charge of security in the nation calls these murderers prodigal sons. The other officials call them our brothers in the bush. They are completely ideologically aligned with it. The Chinese are funding it. It's also a major transit hub for heroin. Now, heroin, you may not realize, funds, they say up to 37% of global jihad is funded by the heroin trade.
And what percentage? Did you say a third?
37%. And it all comes out of Afghanistan, that area. And you can research that it funds a huge portion of global jihad. Nigeria's current president, he goes by the name Bola Tinubu, but nobody knows his real name. His whole background is a mystery. He has 3 different official birth dates. One of his college diplomas is for a female. So complete mystery man. He was forced to leave the United States. He was in South Chicago the same time as Obama and Axelrod, and was a heroin kingpin. He wrote a check for $500,000 to the DEA and fled the country. That's the current president, a heroin kingpin. So, and he's being shielded by the CIA even to this day.
Wait a second. You're saying that Bola what?
Tinubu
gets his money from engaging in the heroin trade.
It's documented in the past that he has, absolutely.
Okay. And you're saying that he is being enabled, protected, sponsored, I don't know what the word is, by our own CIA?
Well, I'll tell you the specifics.
Tell me.
There are some 2,500 pages of DEA court documents in these proceedings in which he was booted out of the country after forfeiting $500,000 to the DEA. A federal judge has ordered the release of 2,500 pages of documents, and the CIA filed a brief using the same language that it uses to cover current assets, saying it would harm U.S. interests if we release these documents about this president of Nigeria. The CIA intervened to stop the release of documents ordered by a judge to protect this president of Nigeria. Yeah.
Where did that? And this was a court case.
Yeah, it's been ordered by a judge. Yeah.
And where?
Here in the United States. Yeah, there's a U.S. federal judge that ordered the release of 2,500 pages of documents pertaining to President Tinubu's DEA issues back in the 90s, and it's being blocked by the CIA. The release is being blocked.
Well, how does the CIA block a judicial order?
Well, they filed a brief, and it's been held up. The documents have not been released, and the CIA filed a brief that says that this guy effectively is an asset. It's the same language they use when they protect assets.
My God. I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but it's like every time I turn over a rock where there's a bad odor, the CIA is underneath it. In so many contexts. It's really disturbing to me. Yeah. And, our own government has created this monster. And it's so, I feel almost disloyal by calling them a monster because, right now they, I think, have done such remarkable work in Iran. I mean, they clearly destabilized the country, leading to what they hoped would be regime change. And then when that didn't work, they somehow got Trump to go in there and clean out the leadership, like 3 levels down. And now, just this week, we entered a 2-week disarmament, basically. We're not going to bomb each other. So I don't know. It's so hard you can't paint the CIA with a broad brush. But I cannot figure out where the puppet masters are. I mean, Brennan, Comey, Clapper, yeah. But there must be more because they're gone. But you kind of get the sense that they're gone, but they're not, maybe. I don't know. It's a community.
Yeah, it's called the deep state for a reason. And, like any government agency, a lot of what's going on today depends on who's in the Oval Office. Of course, there are those rogue elements that are going to undermine that. But the president does have influence. But what about the appointees from previous administrations? They're still there. They're still in power. They're the rogue elements. If you ask who the architect is, at least in Nigerian context, I can tell you exactly what it is. It's Barack Obama. This genocide, this current jihad did not exist until Obama unleashed it on purpose. So in an accidental twist of history, Nigeria ended up in 2010 with a Christian Southern president. He was not supposed to be the president. He was a token vice president. Then the president got sick and died. And so Goodluck Jonathan took office. And it was like LBJ, becoming president. It was the year before the election. And so he was swept in to be the president. Well, that's not supposed to happen in Nigeria. It's rigged so that would never happen. This was right during the Arab Spring time when Obama was flipping a lot of nations towards radical Islam. So there was a radical northern warlord, Muhammad Buhari, who had been a former military dictator. There was a perennial presidential candidate, never got anywhere with it. He had been on the record calling for global Sharia law, on the record calling for Sharia law across Nigeria at any cost. This guy all of a sudden emerged. And oh, by the way, he was also the man that Boko Haram, the terrorist group, requested that he be the guy that mediates for them with the federal government. So he's a friend of Boko Haram. All of a sudden, at the time when Jonathan had traction, it was the only nation on earth where radical Islam was being pushed back. But all of a sudden, on the surface, they start losing. Boko Haram attacks villages, drives people out of their homes, starts these massacres, kidnaps the Chibok girls, all that stuff. And Jonathan is painted as being weak on terror. Obama comes out publicly for Buhari, and Buhari takes office. Behind the scenes, here's what happened, and it's documented. First of all, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, refused to label Boko Haram a terrorist organization, even though they blew up the UN headquarters and all that. Then Obama pulled our support of the Nigerians' fight against terror on the auspices that they didn't support gay marriage, so we can't support them. So he blocked them then from, they tried to go to Israel, they tried to go to South Africa. He blocked them from getting support. And guess who was Buhari's on the record campaign advisor during this time? None other than David Axelrod.
Oh my gosh.
Obama unleashed Boko Haram on purpose to get Jonathan out of office and get Buhari in office. And once that genie was out of the bottle, there's no putting it back. All of the genocide is squarely on Obama's head.
All right. So who is Hussein Obama? Is he a jihadist? Is he a Muslim? Or is he a Christian?
I think the evidence points that way for sure. You know, he's probably crass as can be. He's friendly to them. The fact is, there's a lot of money, a lot of power in the Islamic world, and he just chose to align with that. Whether it's ideological for him or just he doesn't care, you know, he's a sociopath that only cares about himself. Either way, he was obviously aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood and the radical Islamists everywhere he went.
And he removed all the sanctions on Iran, and we're paying for that right now. And
pallets of cash, literal pallets of money.
Yeah, billions of dollars he gave to release back to them. Yeah. And Trump says that helped them fund world terrorism. Yeah. So is it possible, should we consider the possibility that Barack Hussein Obama was a Manchurian candidate?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And again, interestingly, tying it back to Nigeria, again, I'm about to drop a bombshell. I'm getting a source that's, I believe, and I know 100% credible, but I'm getting him to put it in writing and notarized before I start speaking about it.
No, do it right now on The Truth. We're trying to grow. That's the viral video we've been looking for.
I'll come back. It has to do with the Chibok girls. And I'll hint the fact that we had the power to rescue them and were ordered to stand down. 276 girls taken off into sex slavery and death. We had the power to rescue them and were ordered to stand down. The next week, Michelle goes out with the Bring Back Our Girls hashtag, which was a slogan of Buhari's political party, which Axelrod had a hand in managing. So we could have rescued the girls. We let them go. And then Michelle Obama comes out with the Buhari campaign slogan from the White House.
Which was what?
Bring Back Our Girls. It became a left-wing thing, but that was a Buhari campaign slogan that David Axelrod was the advisor of. And it was engineered. Those girls we could have rescued those girls, and we were ordered not to. Let them go.
So who are there? So who are Nigeria's allies? Clearly, the Chinese. I don't know. Would you call them an ally? I mean, they're in there raping and pillaging their minerals and natural resources. That didn't sound like an ally, but I guess they would be allied.
They try to straddle the fence. And so the reason for keeping up this illusion of secular democracy, I believe, is to keep access to the Western markets. They're the conduit where East meets West, so to speak. And that the illusion of secularity is rapidly crumbling. And I think Trump's going to put an end to it really soon. I think his we'll get into that statement last night and last week was a pivot to Nigeria where he's made some promises and he's been delayed. But China, you can't, I've been to Nigeria 16 times. Chinese are everywhere. They say anywhere from 100 to 150,000 Chinese nationals live in Nigeria. And the people I know that in the middle belt where this mining, strip mining is taking place, say that these people are the most soulless, demonic people. I mean, they're just totally in it to get the minerals at any cost. Doesn't matter who they kill or anything, who they corrupt. So China is deeply embedded. You could drive through Abuja, the capital, and there's these electronic monitoring boxes provided by the Chinese Communist Party. It's everywhere. They are aligned with Turkey. They've been Iran. Gosh, since we've been bombing Iran, there have been protests, pro-Iran protests in the north, where they're stomping American flags and waving Iranian ones. So they're very connected to Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Russia on one side, but then the U.S. and Europe on the other side. It's an interesting dynamic.
Sounds like they want to be married and still cheat on their wife. I mean, it's like they're trying to get in bed with everybody. And I don't know, maybe that's a good thing for a country if you're trying to get your product sold and increase the standard of living. But you, Mike, founded the African Arise, a nonprofit serving 550 displaced children through schools built in Nigeria. Tell us about it.
It's over 600 now, and in a few weeks it'll be 1,100 children. We're opening a fourth campus. So I've been a missionary to Nigeria since 2010, been there 16 times. It was my 10th trip in 2019. All this stuff was going on, but I wasn't aware of it. They kept it compartmentalized. They suppressed it. In 2019, in a random thing, I stumbled into a camp for displaced Christians in the middle of Abuja, the modern capital. And nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Sewage ditches, hand-built shanties. The government denies they exist. It calls them criminals and vagrants and beggars. The UN denies these camps exist, even though they documented them in 2015. They haven't gone anywhere now. They say they don't exist. And I met a woman there who had been a school teacher in the north 5 years before. Boko Haram killed all the men around her, burned their school, burned their church, and she and her daughters escaped with a whole bunch of them, made it to this camp. Horrible conditions, so dignified, though, amazing. But I asked her, what can we help you with? What do you need? I thought she'd say a water well or food or medicine, because they need all those things. But she said one thing. She said, help me teach these children, because that's their only way they're ever going to get out of here is with an education. It'll give them hope. It'll give them strength of character so they don't get recruited to the radicals, which is their main recruitment base. And it'll give them a vision for a future. And so we've set up a school in that camp. Now we're opening our fourth campus. We provide these children with a free, high-quality education, and also we help with feeding, medical care, etc. And the testimonies are dramatic. They showed up wanting to get guns, go back and kill, and now they're getting an education. They want to go back and rebuild. And here's where it's super important, and where Nigeria will metastasize rapidly if we don't intervene. There are as many as 10 to 12 million displaced Nigerians. These people were productive. They were prosperous. A lot of them professionals, peaceful, forced off their lands by these radicals. They experience nothing but trauma. They get ground down. The government will bulldoze their homes. I mean, it's horrible what's going on. Boko Haram, the terror group, literally means, the name means Western education is forbidden. They recruit from the displaced. The statistics show up to 60% of displaced will be radicalized without intervention. And if you do the math, that's 5 to 6 million more jihadis by 2030 without intervention. Imagine this vibrant nation with its trajectory with 5 to 6 million more jihadis with $1 trillion in mineral wealth with the ambition for global Sharia law. It's a terror pipeline. In fact, one drop went through it a couple weeks ago. The Old Dominion shooter was radicalized in Nigeria.
Jiminy Christmas.
They desire to use it. When we bombed ISIS out of the Middle East in Trump's first term, they relocated to northern Nigeria. It's the headquarters for ISIS, Al-Qaeda. All these groups now have coalesced there, and they have an ambition to use it as a launch pad for global Sharia law jihad. And so that's why this is so important. The sixth largest nation on earth, on track to be the third largest, $1 trillion in mineral wealth, top 5 OPEC, producer of films, music, prolific, with 10 to 12 million displaced, primed to be radicalized. That's a powder keg. That's a clear and present danger to our national security today.
Wow. All I can say is, wow. I had no idea. I mean, I was vaguely aware of Nigeria, but I never paid it 2 minutes worth of mental time. It just never came up on my radar, as you have very logically and academically presented it to us today, for which I'm thankful. 16 trips to Nigeria, and you describe yourself as having gone there as a missionary, but it seems like you've morphed into a caretaker for all of these girls that are hiding in a camp. Aren't you scared when you go there? I mean, how do you move around and not, avoid getting killed?
Well, that's a good question. I've been a couple times when it was level 4, do not travel, State Department. That's the highest level, red flag, combat zone warning, and I would go anyway. But I am a missionary. It's a different form of mission work. Building schools is mission work. God has opened so many doors for me there. It's amazing. But I've always kept a low profile. I wasn't recognizable. I was just a guy. I didn't call attention to myself. I was able to move around relatively freely. That changed dramatically last October. Today, I'm said to be the most famous American in Nigeria. There's people naming their kid. It's crazy. What happened is in late September is when Nigeria started to become an issue. When Bill Maher started talking about it, and then Ted Cruz started talking about it, and then Trump came out and said we might designate them a country of particular concern, which he had done in his first term, and Biden undid it. So the Nigerian government was starting to panic. They don't want this designation. I got a call on October 5th during Bible study in Blanco, Texas, from the National Security Advisor of Nigeria and a man who's now an ambassador of Nigeria. They called me and asked me to come and help with this whole PR thing. They wanted me to be the Jane Fonda of the Nigerian genocide. They had set up a stooge tour to go and see all the happy people and smile and do an international press conference. Everything's cool here. And I was on a plane a week later to go do that very thing. However, I had other plans. I'd prepared a factual report, an indictment for genocide. My advisors told me they'd probably kill me. I updated my will. I had a farewell dinner with my kids. I got on the plane. I got stuck in a room for a photo op with 3 known terrorist imams, a few other little episodes, and then got to the press conference. And with the whole world watching, I indicted the nation for genocide. I had a car waiting outside. I got in the car, drove to the airport, flew home. Before I got on the airplane, I had 114 Twitter followers. Now I have over 210,000 social media followers. It blew up. That press conference got 3.2 billion global impressions in 72 hours. It flipped the global narrative from 80% denial to 70% affirmation in 72 hours. And 2 weeks later, Trump declared it a country of particular concern and then bombed Sokoto. And the folks in Washington say it was because of that. It was because of that press conference that it was the narrative flip that got him to take action. And so now I don't know that I can go back safely without a diplomatic cover and a Marine contingent. I have actually, Ambassador Sam Brownback told me I need to start carrying here in Blanco, Texas, and I do. I've had the president of Nigeria name check me. I've had the Sultan of Sokoto name check me, and I've had the Imam de Boko Haram, Sheikh Gumi, name check me repeatedly. So I'm a known quantity now. I don't know that I can go back and wander the streets looking for street food again like I used to. But hey, it goes with the territory.
Those are incredible. That's an incredible story. Mike Arnold, an author and a former mayor of Blanco, Texas, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's a small town. I fixed the water, I fixed the potholes, and rode off into the sunset.
Well, come to West Palm Beach, Florida. We need you here. And a philanthropist, missionary. What a life well led. And he's written a book called Epicenter, Nigeria, Radical Islam and the War for Global Order. Where do we find the book?
It's on Amazon. If you're in the United States, a different platform in Nigeria where it's a very hot seller.
It is allowed to be sold in Nigeria?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's an online platform. I don't know. They can't do much about it. It's such a huge country.
Well, they just shut down the internet in Iran when they don't like information flow.
They have shut down social media there before in Nigeria, but I think it's gotten critical mass now. I think this regime's on the ropes. In fact, I think Trump just pivoted last night with his biggest announcement of maybe of his term, the Iran ceasefire. He stuck Nigeria right in the middle of his announcement. I don't know if you caught that.
I did not.
Yeah, he said he went after CNN for this fake headline that originated on a website in Nigeria. He didn't need to say that, but he stuck Nigeria in, because I think during this 2 weeks, he's going to pivot. The military's already in place there. I think he's going to, there's been a couple other statements made in the past week that signaled, a quick shift in narrative back to Nigeria. I think we're going to see it.
Do we have military presence in Nigeria? Do we have bases or anything?
We have 200 troops there with Reaper drones that have been there for several months. And again, my belief is based on a number of things. And I've been in Sam Brownback's little small working group. A number of my policy points have made it into a bill that's before Congress. So I'm somewhat up to speed on what's going on in Washington. They've been mapping. They know where all the terrorists are. They know where they're camped. Ted Cruz came out last week and said, we know who the political sponsors are, and we're tracking them as well. I think everything's primed for the push of a button to really radically change things there. I hope that's the case.
Sounds like it's time for the Western world to show up, including the EU, and the atrocities that you've described certainly warrant our attention. I appreciate your bringing it to our attention, and it's been a fascinating opportunity to speak with you, Mike Arnold, and thank you again for coming on The Truth. Have a great rest of your weekend. And where do we follow you? I want to follow your story.
MikeArnold.org. You can find me there, and you can also link to our schools. Look, just this last week during Holy Week, a number of attacks, thousands and thousands more displaced, headed to the camps where we're set up. I'm doing all I can. We need some support to help rescuing these children from the cycle of death. We have the ability to grow our schools. We're opening a 4th campus with an orphanage, a school, and a clinic. So MikeArnold.org, you can find the book, you can find my blog, you can find my socials, and you can find our schools there. MikeArnold.org.
I bet you could donate $10 at MikeArnold.org.
Goes a long way. Goes a long way.
Well, let's do it. I think that's a great cause. And thank you for what you're doing. And clearly you are doing God's work, and that is the truth. And I'm John Gordon. Our listeners know that I have been very vocal over the last 3.5 years that we've been doing this program with my desire and wish, aspiration that our country get back closer to God. Well, our next guest, Bruce Wolf, has written a book that espouses just that. Finding Hope, Navigating an Obscure Path, Learning to Trust God When You Can Barely Understand Him. That's an interesting title. Welcome, Bruce. Thank you for joining The Truth today. Is the fault that God is mysterious, or that people just haven't invested the time getting to know him?
Oh, probably all the above. Thank you, John. Good to see you. Yeah, I mean, an omniscient God and people that think they know a lot but really don't. I don't know how you interface without some of it getting lost in the interaction there. But mysterious, obscure, yeah, it sounds like a normal day getting to know the Lord.
You've had a very interesting life and career. You were the son of a missionary who was with the Salvation Army, drug you all over the world. And then you followed in his footsteps and have done your own mission work, and you've been able to combine it with my love of aviation. What a great pursuit. So tell us a little bit about your background, your history, and how you got to where you are today.
Well, we'll try to give the thumbnail version, because if I have to step through the 27 moves in 20 years, we're going to be here a while. So... honestly, I don't remember most of those, but I was born in Greenville, South Carolina, to two parents that started out in New York City. So, there's a whole backstory of what brought them to the South. But Dad was with the Salvation Army, and he was stationed as the preacher, a captain in the Salvation Army at quite a number of locations around the South, and including the Carolinas and Florida, and at one point Atlanta. But then he was appointed as a missionary with the Salvation Army to be the leader, a principal of the Salvation Army Training College in Lagos, Nigeria. So after all those moves around the South, we lived in England for just under a year, and met the Queen while I was a child there in 1965, and then we moved to Lagos. And we were there just a short while, and the Biafran War, for those out there my age and maybe your age too, John, can remember that, but they started to shoot, and yeah, it's still known today as Africa's bloodiest coup, the war with Biafra, and we honestly wound up evacuating there in 1967 with basically what we could carry, and came back to the States. So that's kind of a rough background for exposure to missions, I'd say, and it took years to get over and try to sort through, what in the world was that all about? Well, in that sorting through, I realized the Lord really had exposed me and stretched me in a lot of ways. I was called what you'd refer to as a third culture kid, growing up in another spot different than where Mom and Dad grew up. Now we're back in that place, which is familiar to them and strange to me. So a lot to work through, and knowing I had technical skills, after college, started a family, and then wound up going back to school. Went to Moody Aviation because I just love to use my hands, and I'm a flight instructor, an aircraft mechanic, and a commercial pilot for 35 years now. And the Lord used that training to put me in a role as a missionary pilot in Mexico, serving with the United Indian Mission for 7 years. And while there, learned of the shortage of recruitment in this area. Not a lot of guys go into this because it takes a lot of time and training and expense to get the training, but as a missionary, you make a subsistence income, and it's tough to pay off debt. So it's kind of a steep incline to recruit for this. So therefore, there's a big shortage. We started an organization in 2000 called Brigade Air, which does exactly that through a camping program and a curriculum with young people. We've had about 4,000 kids in 21 states and 6 foreign countries go through our program since 2000.
That's amazing.
So that's the circuit. That's not bad for about a minute and a half.
That's a good summary, and what a wonderful life you've been able to lead. So tell us about the book, Finding Hope, Navigating an Obscure Path. What is the premise, and what are you trying to convey?
I guess you say something's obscure when it's hazy. You can't really see your way clearly. And there's elements of that throughout the whole Word of God that suggest to me that that's on purpose. Number one, God's omniscient. He's all-knowing, all-powerful. He knows everything, and He made us. He's the creator. So how does the created interface with the creator? I think we're always going to be at a disadvantage there. And so how do you know a mysterious God that can create with words? As it says in Genesis, He spoke and things came into order. Well, He gave us His word, but within the word, even in Psalm 119, 105 is a great verse. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. That lamp under the feet, I thought Hebrew poetry, lamp to the feet, light unto the path, sounds like same things spoken 2 different ways. But the longer I looked at that, I think the Lord showed me something back when I was going through Moody Aviation in Tennessee, and it was this. The lamp under the feet is static. Light unto the path, that's dynamic. That lamp, you're standing still. It's a little tiny flickering flame on a little oil lamp, maybe a palm-sized bowl of oil with a wick made out of either flax or goat hair, just a 1-inch little flame. You can't run with that. You're going to walk slow and careful. But if you're standing still, you're only going to see your feet. But it's once you start to take a step with it, Now I got enough light for what? One more step and one more step. But it seems incredible that God gave us his word and described it as a little flickering flame, a lamp under our feet. Not very bright, not very American. You know, we want 50,000 candle power that sees around the corner. But we got a lamp in the feet. When we start to move with it in the light we were given, it becomes a light unto our path. And that's where the path is formed, is a small step at a time. So I think it's a method of guidance that the word that God intended on purpose. It requires us to take it slow and careful and constantly taking a self-check. Is this where you want me, Lord? But you still got to trust him completely and take a step. It's not in the dark. It's into a dimly lit path. But you do it a step at a time. So my book is my story of how that started. I was a broken kid and a lot of haggle, a lot of moves. I didn't know where I was from and all of the challenges involved with figuring out who God is and who I am and what he wanted to do with me. And wound up going to training as a pilot eventually. And the Lord actually used me to do some things here. So we're still actively, our program recruits kids into some people call this the church's best kept secret, missionary aviation. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But anyway, that's sort of what my background, it takes us from the time of my being a kid all the way through training and then starting Brigade Air 26 years ago.
Well, I can't say that I am a student of the Bible. I wish that I were. I need to take the time to read the Bible and study it. It's one of those things that I've always been intending to get around to. But I did grow up in the church, and I do attend church, and I serve my church. But I can't quote the scripture and have a meaningful conversation with you or any other theologian that knows the Bible well. Although my mother was reading the Bible for the fourth time when she passed away. She loved the Bible. She did talk about the Bible a lot. But is it an oversimplification just to think that our life is pretty well choreographed if you just read the Bible and stick to the teachings, which I can't quote the Bible. I can't explain it, but I do. I know the 10 Commandments, and I do pray, and I do believe, and I do try to live a godly life. Is it possible without having become a student of the Bible and knowing it intimately?
Well, I think you get to choose how close you want to walk with the Lord, and it's you can never exhaust what there is to learn, because the Bible describes itself as living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, that it can divide between our intentions and our words and our actions. You go, that's a mouthful. Sharper than a two-edged sword, living and active. It's not just words on a page. That God has designed it in such a way that as we interact with the precepts and principles that are thankfully printed down, that our walk with him grows, it deepens, our faith deepens. It takes our interaction and our desire and obedience to want, like the old hymn says, just a closer walk with thee. There's his part and there's our part. Let God do his part, but we've got to be faithful to our part. And even Jesus with his disciples, you saw there were concentric circles. There was Jesus and Peter and John. It's kind of the inside 3 or 4 guys there, right? And then there's another circle outside and another, and you keep going until you get to Judas, who, why the Lord called him to be a disciple is a question I'll ask him when I get up there. But there are circles to it. You get to decide how close with him do you want to walk. And the closer you walk to him, the more he uses you for his glory and his kingdom, and to make his priorities our priorities. So there's choice involved, and we have to understand the difference between a biblical worldview that only comes through the study of the word and, being a good American or a good patriot, or there are other things that we can measure ourselves by, but the Bible's pretty clear. It's not just following rules. I'm not a rules guy. I just don't function with that well. I'm a relational guy. And so slowly learning how to have a relationship with God only comes by spending time alone with him. So you trust him more, you begin to take risks on what he says, and then he does crazy things and answers prayer miraculously. We could keep going here all day with that, but small steps at a time, he does show more and more of himself as we seek him. We have to have a heart that seeks after him.
One of the things I contemplate a lot is just how fortunate we are to live in this country and to have the ability to pray and gather to worship God. And you can do that even if you're not worshiping the same God that you and I do. And it seems to me that over my lifetime, the country as a whole has just become so much more affluent than we were in my early years. You know, my parents had a party line at our house. I mean, you'd pick up the phone and you'd hear other people talking on it. You'd set it quietly back in the cradle and wait 5 minutes and try again. There was no dial on the phone. Air travel was relatively new. There were commercial airlines when I was a kid, but in the big scheme of things, it was maybe a 30-year-old industry when I was born, and it has advanced so rapidly, and just the innovation that we've seen in this country and the affluence that is open and available to anybody who wants to grab it. I would naively perhaps think that all of that would make us a very grateful people. Yet it seems that with all of the goodness and bounty that we are able to enjoy and the affluence that we have achieved and the education that has been made available, you would think the world would become a better organized and happier place to live. But there seems to be as much, if not more, turmoil in the world today than there maybe has ever been in my lifetime. I wasn't alive in World War II. I lived through the Vietnam War. That I thought it was going to be permanent. Every day on the front page of the newspaper for 10 years. But once that was resolved, we've enjoyed a period of extended peace for the most part. Obviously, there have been other skirmishes that have lasted, like the Iraq War that should never have begun, that lasted for 10 years, maybe 12. Then there was Afghanistan. Is there a means by which the people of this country can first and foremost come together? And is God the way that could happen?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, from a biblical worldview, from that perspective, first of all, prophecy in that Bible that we're open to study indicates that things are going to get worse. Before the very end, there's a promise that Jesus Christ returns in the flesh, that he's coming back. And when I say getting worse, God's not surprised by this. I think, when you read the book of Romans, you understand that, first of all, it wasn't God the Father, it was Jesus Christ the Son, who is the creator of the world, the same guy they nailed to a cross. And it says that in Romans, that before the world was created, God intended to send his Son as a sacrifice for our sins. Now, I read that and I go, well, if I was going to buy a kit and build a grandfather clock and I knew that were parts missing or something was broke, I wouldn't continue to build that grandfather clock. I'd trade it in and get another one. God's got a different way of doing things, though. He went ahead and created this world anyway, knowing we would reject him, knowing we'd choose our own way, knowing that we were not going to welcome him in and choose his way and walk with him in accordance with his terms. And he made us anyway, knowing full well it was going to require him to make this incredible sacrifice by sending his son to die for our sins, because he wants relationship with us. So with that backdrop, seeing world events, things are going where prophecy in the Bible told us they would go. Things, Armageddon, all that stuff you can read in the book of Revelation. It's going in that direction. And the answer to your question, in my opinion, is that God is the only answer for this country, because we are winding things down here to what the Bible would describe as the last days. And it's ironic because throughout Scripture, Jesus pitched this dichotomy perfectly. You can't serve God and money. He said that point blank. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have money. It means that money makes a terrible God. And so as time goes, you're talking about convenience and ease and speed, bigger, better, faster, more. Yeah, we're that society. But you mentioned the irony is the more stuff we get, the faster things go, the easier, supposedly more convenient things become, the farther we seem to be getting from God. It was Alexander Solzhenitsyn that said that about Russia. How did they get the way they got? He said, we forgot God.
Can we get it back? Can we restore religion as part of the fabric of America?
Individually, we can come back to God. As a nation, I have my doubts. It's on an individual basis of faith in what Christ has done and living in accordance to what that Bible teaches. That's an individual thing. Billy Graham was good at filling auditoriums and stadiums, and yet those folks who walked forward, was that decision for Christ that they made on television that we saw for 50 years legitimate? You'd have to know the individual to answer that question. So while there's an opportunity for a crowd in many instances, it still boils down to what is your individual walk with Christ like? So can we? Yeah, there have been revivals throughout history where a large group of people did turn back to the Lord, right? I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know that if a crowd of people are going to come back to him, they got to do it one at a time.
Well, the biggest source of optimism that I've heard in a long time is that Zen, what are they?
Gen Z.
A Gen Zer. That's what you are, Anthony. Yeah, you're a Gen Zer. But they're returning to God and church in droves, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
What you reckon has caused that phenomenon?
I think you see that as a response to also an increase in suicide and nihilism. It's like, wait a minute, we've done what the system said we should do. Kids have done what they were told to do. They went and got an education, right? Mm-hmm. And now where's that get them?
So it's timely that you came on with us today, Bruce, because just following this interview, we are going to be speaking to Mike Arnold, who has written a book called Epicenter, Nigeria. And he's really shined a light on just how prominent Nigeria has been in our global history and what a commanding role they play. And I understand that you actually spent a good number of years in Nigeria with your folks.
Yeah, well, that was one of those 27 moves in 20 years I referenced earlier, but that is the place where my dad was appointed by the Salvation Army as the principal of the Salvation Army Training College in Lagos, Nigeria, right in their capital.
Right, which you alluded to earlier. How long did you live there?
Well, we were in England for just under a year, and then we moved to Lagos in '65. We were only there till March of '67, and that was not the plan.
So a couple of years almost. Tell us what life was like and set the stage for us so we'll have a little glimpse before we speak to Mike Arnold.
Well, in the book, I go into quite some detail about it, but 98 degrees, 98% humidity, 365 days a year. You're on the equator. So, you take your blue suede shoes and put them in the closet and take them out the following Sunday, and they're green suede shoes. It's just how it was. It's jungle. It's rough. I loved it as a kid because, you could pretty well do what you want. It was maybe how you grew up in Georgia back in the day too. Make sure you're home before dark.
It was safe.
Yeah, yeah, it felt that way up until it wasn't. And then there was a military coup that happened on January 6, 1966. And we were there about a year. And the Army overthrew the government by assassinating 21 heads of state, including their prime minister. And it happened about 8 blocks from where we were living.
My gosh.
And so the Nigerian army, and there's factions that, unless you're living there and understand how tribal factions work, which the English knew nothing about when they established Nigeria as a quote unquote nation 100 years earlier. But, different tribes, there are Muslim leaning tribes, there are Christian leaning tribes. And so you have Hausa, Fulani, and Yoruba are 3 of the big major tribe groups. And then you got guys in the army who are part of one tribe and want nothing to do with the others. So there was a faction of Muslim army officers that were behind the assassinations that night. So it got very tense very quickly, and there was shooting in the streets. And ultimately, there was 2 attempts on my father's life in the last 3 months that we lived there, where assassins were sent onto the Salvation Army campus. 2 different occasions. Both times our night watchman caught the guy, took care of him with a nightstick. Apparently the second one he actually killed, brought him up the stairs in the middle of the night, and my mom spotted the blood dripping from the gentleman's ear, knowing that his head had been crushed. And so that was our cue there. The Salvation Army in London was the territorial headquarters that commanded over my folks, said it's time to pack your bags and move. So in March of 67, we evacuated. We caught the last 2 berths aboard a ship called the Accra, which sailed from London up to Southampton, England. And then back in the day, Juan Tripp with Pan Am Airlines offered free fare home for American citizens, like he had been doing for Vietnam soldiers that needed to get back and forth. He gave them free fare. Well, we flew home from Heathrow to JFK March 15th, 1967. It was snowing sideways when we got to New York after living on the equator for those years. So we all had blonde hair, crew cuts, and tan skin, and no winter coats when we came back to America.
Culture shock. Well, thank you so much, Bruce Wolf, for coming on. He's written the book, Finding Hope, Navigating an Obscure Path, Learning to Trust God When You Can Barely Understand Him.
Can I put a plug in there with a coupon before we're done?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah, so Faithful Text is the site to go to. You save 25% this year because it's the 250th anniversary of the birthday of America. And that coupon code, if you go to faithfultext.com, is 250TH, like 250th, BDAY, abbreviated for birthday, 250TH, BDAY. At the checkout on faithfultext.com, you'll get 25% off. Or you can just go anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Nobles also has the book.
So a pilot, missionary, author, and a pretty darn good salesman. We'll put the link and the code on the website and on our broadcast today in the comments, so that anyone that wants to go get faithfultext.com and buy Bruce's book there, use the promo code 250TH BDAY. That's 250th birthday.
That's Tango Hotel Bravo Delta Alpha Yankee. I didn't hear that yet.
Spoken as a true aviator. Bruce Wolf, thank you for coming on The Truth. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Thank you, John.
We're coming to you from West Palm Beach, Florida, from our new studio, as you know, and that is sponsored by Bone Frog Coffee. We come to you every week on the John Fredericks Radio Network, 10 cities, 24 AM and FM radio stations, and we also come to you on CDM Press. You can watch us right now on Rumble, Getter, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and what have I left off, Anthony? X.com. Just look for John Gordon Truth. And if you like us and you feel what would it be? If you want to subscribe, we would be grateful. About 2% of our radio listeners actually subscribe to our social media. If 50% of our radio listeners went right now to getter.com or rumble.com and subscribe to our channel, we would catapult into another strata in the podcasting social media world. We have a great radio audience. We're trying to build the audience on those social media platforms so we can have a better megaphone and reach more people. But as I said, the studio is sponsored by Bone Frog Coffee. I start my day every day with Bone Frog. And if you're grinding through each day like I am, and you need the perfect kick without the jitters, grab some Bone Frog coffee. It's veteran owned, founded by a Navy SEAL, Tim Cruikshank, as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Navy Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special operations. If you don't already know it, the Bone Frog emblem is a sacred symbol of the SEAL teams that represent those that have given their lives in combat, and is a reminder to the rest of us of the ultimate sacrifice of our freedoms and for our freedoms and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch roasted from top shelf Arabica beans. Is that even close, Anthony? Pretty close, he says. Smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Just think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. Aiming for $500,000 donated. Coffee with a cause? You betcha. That's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head over to bonefrog.coffee.com. So you can snag some K-Cups, some whole beans, or merchandise, like the shirt that we showed you earlier on in the broadcast. Maybe Anthony will even put it back up for us. There it is. They have them in men, women, small, medium, and large. Go to bonefrogcoffee.com, get your K-Cups, your whole beans, and your merchandise, and use the program code TRUTH. Start your day like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our veterans and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. Check them out right now at www.bonefrogcoffee.com. I had the pleasure of appearing on another podcast and radio show called Veronica Live. And I had such an enjoyable conversation, I decided to reciprocate and invite Veronica to come on The Truth. And here she is, live and in color, red hair and all. Welcome, Veronica.
Hi, John. How are you? Thanks for having me. We had a great time when you came on my show.
Well, good. Well, let's have a great time today. Do you get a lot of comments about your red hair? I mean, I always, the perception is that redheads are kind of feisty and, can mix it up with you. Would that be a fair stereotype?
Probably. I pay big bucks for this, and I've kind of been a redhead for 35 years. So.
All right. Well, let's get feisty. Let's start by talking about the Virginia constitutional amendment that was passed earlier this week by like a 2% margin. And they basically marginalized every Republican in Virginia because they packed them into one district, which meant that the state went from 6-5 Republican or Democrat to Republican to 10-1 Democrat to Republican. What do you think?
Well, they've always said Virginia is for lovers, but really, John, Virginia is for power. And I am so frustrated. And, Virginia is part of my, it's in my heart. I graduated from Mount Vernon High School. I'm a George Mason grad from up there. I was stationed when I was a captain at Langley Air Force Base. So I've lived a total of 7 years in Virginia. And, their governor, Abigail Spanberger, I call her Corella de Virginia, because this is a power grab that is humongous, because hopefully, the courts have put a stop on this. I saw yesterday their former AG, Ken Cuccinello, came out and said that he thinks that it's going to be thrown out because this isn't fair, because they weren't going to do redistricting till 2030, and they've violated some rules. And, you're a lawyer, so you probably understand all the rules that they violated, getting this to the finish line. But so frustrating for Virginia. It's because really, how do you go from 6 seats that now you're going to have 10 Dems in that state, and 1 Republican versus 6-4. So I'm hoping that they can put a stop on this. But this governor is aggressive. I think she's doing this as well, John, because she wants to audition as, a vice president potential candidate in the upcoming election, is how I see that as well.
That's a good point. That's a good observation. Well, it's so wrong on its face that over 30% of Virginia is Republican, and now they've got 9% electoral representation in the United States House of Representatives. But the problem, as I see it, is that the Democrats have packed their Court of Appeals, which is the next level of appeal of the judge's decision that halted the constitutional amendment. And I suspect that they're going to overturn the lower court and, in effect, allow the gerrymandering to go forward. Then they've got there's an appeal to the Supreme Court, and it's not a whole lot better. It's about a 4-3 split, Democrat to Republican. So it just depends on whether they're going to do the right thing. I advocated on John Fredericks this morning that someone in Virginia file a federal lawsuit today and allege failure of due process and equal protection under the 14th Amendment, because they're really depriving people of their franchise, and obviously it's all in preparation for the 2028 presidential elections. That's the only place it's really going to make a difference, other than the balance of power in the House of Representatives. But so far, the Republicans have been able to counter that, but up until Tuesday of this week. And now I'm not sure if it is allowed to stand.
Well, Corella de Virginia, as I call her, said, fairness won with this on Tuesday, and that Trump started this with the Texas redistricting. And, this football's running because you live in the Freedom, Florida, like I do, in our great state. And Governor DeSantis also came out and has taken on Hakeem Jeffries, because, Hakeem's like, Florida better not redistrict. And I've been hearing this for a long time, because I've had a lot of Florida politicians on my show, that it's going to happen. So next week, Governor DeSantis is bringing the legislature together, and we're going to run with this football. And he invited, it was so funny, because Governor DeSantis, he's no nonsense. He invited Hakeem to come down and stay in the mansion and let's go fishing. And I really think the Dems are very nervous about Florida, because you've seen in our elections, Trump won 67 counties when he won. Like we're definitely swinging Republican.
He even won Palm Beach County.
Right, which was huge, because I was the Trump chair in 2016, and he won 56 out of 11 counties when he was running the first time. And so to win them all, this shows you that Florida dominates. So, Hakeem is calling this dummy mandering, but I think we have a chance to get some more seats, and we've got to play hard, John. You know that, because the Dems are always playing hard, and I don't want to go back to a Kamala world or Biden world. There's too much going on.
No, it was the longest 4 years of my life.
Right.
And I didn't think we were going to survive it. And I
didn't either.
I predicted on my show that there would be a black swan event and that we wouldn't have elections. Thank God that I was wrong. And I didn't predict it. I just said that I would not be surprised, because they were so desperate, because Biden performed horrendously. Speaking of which, can you help me understand, why are we talking about Biden's mental capacity, which is legit, but why are we emphasizing that over his just sheer corruptness? $3 million from the mayor of Moscow, diamonds and money from a Russian oligarch that went to Hunter, and then Burisma, $800,000 a year with no expertise, and then $3 million from a company in China that had links to the CCP, and then spy balloons that were allowed to hover over our country's most secret military bases.
That one.
It's just so obvious to me. I really think that his work, that his presidency was treasonous.
Oh, I agree.
I felt like they were really trying to destroy our country from within. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. I don't think it's hyperbole. And I was legitimately worried that we would not have a fair election in 24 because we saw what 2020 resulted in. If they'd done it once, why wouldn't they do it again? And until now, there has been no sign of accountability. Now, we hope that we're going to get accountability now, but it remains to be seen. It's awfully quiet up there in Quantico, where the ballots from Georgia's 2020 election are being analyzed. But my sense is they're loading the arsenal. They're packing their powder, and we're going to get a real blast before the midterms, and they'll time it perfectly.
Well, I want a midterm surprise. I've been waiting for golden handcuffs, as I call them, since Trump came into power, and we really haven't seen them come out. I mean, that was interesting, too, because our wonderful governor that you and I love, he met with Trump this week, too, and there's, talk that he wants to be the attorney general or maybe Supreme Court person, or potentially if Secretary of War steps away, Hegseth, that he would roll into that role. So I kind of wish he would be the AG, because I want golden handcuffs on everybody. Because think what they've done. I mean, how they went after Trump's family, how they went after I have so many people that they've gone after. I've interviewed J6ers many times and what they went through in prison, and the funny thing is you still meet these liberals. I was on a plane back from Paris, and a liberal talked to me for 9 hours.
Good heavens, that's a long flight. It just got longer.
Well, I'm not joking. She talked to me for 9 hours. She hugged me at the end because she's like, we can have a conversation. But she still believed that all of these things were true, that Trump has dementia, the J6, they were really trying to take over the country. I said, well, did you know they held the door open and many walked through that way? So I don't know.
Like Brandon Fallows, a 20-year-old who they held the door open for, he walked in, he gave himself a self-guided tour of the Hall of Statues. He touched nothing. He broke nothing. He disparaged no one. And then after 20 minutes, he showed himself out. Do you know that young man spent 3 years in prison and was charged with an insurrection? And he was 20 years old at the time,
so
19
sad.
Years old.
So sad.
They effectively ruined his life, gave him a felony conviction that will follow him for life, and they put him in solitary confinement when he somehow was able to post on X how horrible the conditions were inside that jail. I mean, it is the lowest of the low. And
well, that's the thing, John. They go after us. And then, of course, the left believes these headlines that are out there. Virginia, this was a power play. So I'm worried about the judges.
It was a power grab is what it was.
Yeah.
And Trump says it was rigged, that the absentee ballots once again flooded into Fairfax County. And whoa, surprise.
So is the bottom line, I mean, for me, redistrict the hell out of Florida. Do what you got to do.
But do it legitimately. I mean, the fact is that we used to allocate congressional seats every 10 years, but that was a custom. It wasn't a law. And now, with all the migration that has occurred in Florida, we have every right to go in and look at the current census and reapportion based on what the population is today. We just don't want to do it fraudulently or through absentee ballots that show up in the middle of the night and unfairly determine the outcome.
Well, I think it goes back to the SAVE Act. That's the bottom line. John, is we've got to get that through. Thune needs to kick some ass and let's go, because how hard is it to show an ID? I just flew to Paris. I just flew to Denver. I'm showing my ID everywhere. Let's get it. You go buy alcohol. Got to show the ID.
You know, and I know that the showing the ID has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It is purely people that don't want to have an ID are telling you openly and notoriously, we are going to cheat because it's the only way we can win. And that's what this is all about. It's about cheating, lying, stealing at every opportunity. And I watched an interview from the Perkins Coie lawyer. What's his name? You remember his name, Anthony? We just watched it this morning. Mark Elias. I came up with it. Anthony didn't come up with it. He'll try and take credit for it. Mark Elias. And he basically just said, we're going to use every tool at our disposal to win. Period. He didn't say ethically, lawfully, constitutionally. He said we're going to use every measure that we can use to fight, and to win. And that's wrong.
And that's what happens when you have no moral compass. You're going to do whatever, because when they said potentially, what was it, like 35,000 ballots came into Fairfax County. I'm telling you, I rolled my eyes. And you've dealt with this in Georgia.
Very much so.
Do you think they're legitimate? I mean, I'm on X all the time. People are like, oh my gosh, they were waiting for this. They had them ready to go. So we've got to have fair and elections. And because I feel like in Florida, we have them. I've had the Republican Party of Florida chairman, Evan Power, on my show multiple times. Florida's got it going on when it comes to being fair. But, I'm worried what went down in Virginia, I have to say.
Well, I hope that the courts will step in. I've just got my doubts. And I really do think that someone needs to file a federal lawsuit today so that we can elevate this to the U.S. Supreme Court. We've got a fighting chance to get justice. So, Elon Musk notoriously has said that he is really tired of people speaking virtuously and acting the opposite. And have we ever seen that played out more spectacularly than the news and the revelations that occurred this week with the Southern Poverty Law Center, the people who stand against racism? And now we find that they were paying the grand, whatever he is, Marshall, the grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
That one blew me away.
I mean, but I've sensed it all my adult life that this racism thing is not really real. Now, it used to be.
It's not real because
it used to be real. But I worked in the worst zip code in America in Atlanta. It's called the English Avenue neighborhood. Highest rate incidence of HIV per capita of any zip code in America. Obesity, diabetes, joblessness, illiteracy, homelessness, hopelessness. And so I've started a charity there in 2006. And one of the things that we did was shine a light on it. And a tragedy occurred there where the police shot and killed a 92-year-old grandmother and then tried to cover it up and plant drugs in her house. It was ridiculous. The whole thing fell apart. 6 policemen, fortunately, went to prison. And they filled that grandmother full of 32 rounds of ammo. And I was so outraged that I reached out to the preacher in the church in the neighborhood where people came to grieve and express their frustration. And we formed the Friends of English Avenue and started helping revitalize the neighborhood. Then shortly thereafter, Arthur Blank, the owner of the Atlanta Falcons, and Dan Cathy, the owner of Chick-fil-A, all came in and they decided to elbow us out of the way because they were going to be the saviors. And that was okay with me. That's exactly what I wanted to happen because I didn't have the resources.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A's big bucks.
They've got big bucks and they've got lots of political clout too. And so that neighborhood really has improved for the better without gentrifying, which was our blueprint from the outset. But the point that I was trying to get to is that I've spent 20 years in that neighborhood. I have looked at the drug dealers face to face. I've talked to the prostitutes, not as a customer, but just talked to them on the street. Let me make that clear.
Please clarify.
I have gone down there. We had 1,000 people on Earth Day about 10 years ago, and I worked side by side with the U.S. attorney, and we picked up trash and litter in the streets. And so we did a lot of good work. But the point I'm trying to make is I know these people. I know them by first name, and I know them. I have been in their homes. And they're as sweet and as kind and as gentle and as God. I'm not talking about the drug dealers and the prostitutes. I'm talking about the people who live there, who are every bit as victimized as anyone. And but the masses are really sweet, kind, and nice people. But the leadership, I got some really nice recognition from Cox Broadcasting and the Trust for Public Land, and we got the 2013 Hero Award. So we were all over the media and the newspaper. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, illustrating the point. The next day, serendipitously, we had a meeting at the church with people that we brought into the neighborhood. We brought over, I don't know the number, well over 1,000 people from the richest zip code in Atlanta to the poorest zip code in Atlanta. Brought them, showed them the conditions, and raised money from them. Well, we had a fundraising luncheon the very next day. And when I showed up there were 10 people on the sidewalk with picket signs saying, "Rich Buckhead, go home.
No
John
way.
Gordon, go home. Get out of our
No.
neighborhood."
Oh
And
my gosh.
So one of my friends walked across the street and said, what are you angry about? He said, "I don't know. I'm just mad." He said, "Well, what are you mad about?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, why are you picketing?" He said, "Because somebody told me to, and if I would,
I was
they'd
gonna say, somebody gave
give
him
me
a
a free
sign.
box lunch."
Yeah.
But it was the leadership, the black leadership in that community that did not want it to change. So because it was their power
Well, it's
base.
power. It's power. Everybody wants their power.
Ivory Young, the late city council person in Atlanta, who I became very good friends with, both he and his wife. We frequently had lunch together, called them the poverty pimps. And
Yeah.
so, and
a good name.
here's the punchline. They want to keep it stirred up. They don't want us to live in harmony. They want to divide us because
I think that's it.
how
When
they
it-
cling to their power.
Yeah.
How
I
sick
think that's it. No,
can people
it's
be?
their moral compass it's off, you know. I mean, that's the bottom line. And when you're talking about this group, I mean, to give the KKK any money, you know, and that's the funny thing. When Obama came into power, I was so excited because I was like, oh, good, we're never going to talk about black white issues anymore. And I think it got worse. And of course, you know, under Biden, General Milley said that we had a white supremacy issue in the military. And I'm a military brat. And then I wore a uniform for 20 years, John. We all bleed red. There's always like onesies, twosies, maybe somewhere. You know what I'm saying? In every organization, you get rid of them, but it was not a problem. It's all creating chaos again, you know? So I don't know. You and I are fighting the fight every day, and we've got to make sure that hopefully I'm praying that the courts will, you know, rule our way, you know, in Virginia, because a lot of people were disenfranchised Tuesday with this power play. And, you know, this governor, wow, she's out of control in my book. I mean, because she doesn't even like our weapons, Second Amendment. That's the next thing that she's like changing laws and things.
My thinking has evolved over the last few years, and I started out thinking that it was Republican versus Democrat. And then it morphed a little bit, and I started thinking that it was really liberals versus conservatives.
Okay.
Then I changed again, and I concluded that the real battle were the haves versus the have-nots. And now I've had another shift in my thinking. And now I conclude that it's really a battle of good versus evil.
Oh, I've said that, John. Spiritual
and I truly
warfare.
believe that that's where we are today. And and I think that's better than Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and liberals, or haves and have-nots, because there's a difference. We've got God on our side as good, fighting evil. And I would take those odds any day.
Well, and I think there was a lot of prayer when Trump won,
No question.
because I was with you. I didn't think we were going to win, and to think that we would have 4 more years of men in the military wearing skirts, I just couldn't handle it. And then, of course, when the DNC, you remember when they brought the trailer that they set up and they were giving abortions out in front of their convention. I mean, what people are these? This is spiritual warfare that we're fighting, because this is extremism. Babies are the most precious thing. So we don't act like this. We don't. And I can't go back. That's why midterms are so important. And if we're able to redistrict, do it legally, legitimately, but let's get it done. And also the SAVE Act, come on, let's get it to the finish line. If it keeps people out, I've got family and friends that live in New York. You just show up and say, oh, my name's this. They don't look at anything. Go vote. You offer your ID. They don't even want to see it.
It's not go vote. It's go cheat.
Yeah.
Because they're not there legitimately.
Right.
But I have come up with this map. And so now I am borderline making another mental shift. And I don't know that I have to have a mental shift. They may be congruent. But I zoomed out, when they went to the moon and we saw the picture of the Earth from
so beautiful.
100,000 miles away. It made me think about our country and all of the evil that is working on us. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you see the map? So outside the United States, we've got these forces, Russia, China, Mexico's a dotted line because they're supposed to be our allies, Cuba, Canada, the globalist, and Iran. We're at war with the solid lines. We just don't call it war, except in Iran's case. But I mean, you would have to be pretty naive to think that we're not at war with China. I mean, what constitutes a war? How about when they have spies living openly in our country that are here to collect our information and do harm to us, like the 2 students at the University of Michigan who brought this fungi, smuggled it back into our country, and it was the only purpose was designed to decimate our agriculture.
Yeah, that was horrible.
If that's not war, I don't know what it is. But then even more concerning are all the forces inside of our country. We've got, we're battling the leftist liberal lunatics that control our high tech, like Google, and then big pharma. And what role did they play in the COVID? We know they played a major role in the vaccine. And then there's telecom, who turned over the records of United States senators to Jack Smith. And then the aerospace industry. But then even more threatening are the sleeper cells that I feel and believe very much so are living inside of our country, that are waiting to spring up and be activated when things get really deep. And then we have our own deep state, which no one now denies. It used to be kind of a suspicion, and now we know that there's a deep state who are in bed with the special interests and the globalists. And then we have Antifa and our own intel and alphabet agencies like the FBI. My God, how does Trump stand it?
I don't know. I've said many times.
Do you think is this overly pessimistic?
No.
Am I overstating the problem here?
No. And a lot of it is follow the money.
Do you want a copy of my map?
Yeah, I need a
autographed
copy
or unautographed?
I'll frame that. We'll frame that and put it over above my head here. But no, it's definitely a problem. Follow the money, because big pharma. Now we've been getting little tidbits that I took 2 of those vaxes too, because my doctor kept saying you need the vax.
Which ones did you get?
It wasn't the J&J.
Pfizer, Moderna.
Moderna. Oh,
do you know that the Moderna COVID vaccine was developed starting in 2015? 2015. Now, how do you reckon they knew that there was going to be a corona?
Well, because I think
COVID
Fauci
virus?
Fauci, and Fauci,
Was
he's
funding.
worth millions now. Millions.
He's worth millions?
Oh yeah, at least
I
10
did not know
million.
that.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. And then he was like the highest paid government employee, because you
Yeah.
can give people bonuses, and which I'm okay if you're a legitimate person, but no, he's worth millions. And again, where are the golden handcuffs on these people? Because when I reflect back on COVID and what we lived through, and then I had a friend, her husband was, working with the military in Italy, and they had drones flying up and down the streets. I could never go back. And again, I think it was a power play.
What was it? You think it was just control?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Was it an experiment to see how it
Well,
would
I
work
mean, all
if
these
they
stories
really wanted to
coming
take
out.
control?
Yes, that, but I think now we would never go through that. We would never, Americans would never allow that again. You put a 50-year-old woman on a plane with a mask. No, we're not doing that again,
And Fauci still got his government paid chauffeur and a car and a pension, but we know he lied to us. His own
dirt.
emails proved that he knowingly lied to the American people when he introduced social distancing. And then we got a hold of his emails, and there's an email that he authored that says there's no scientific confirmation that social distancing stops the spread of the virus. Period.
Well, he said he made it up.
He made it up. And then the mask, there was no science, and I follow the science. But his own email said there's no science to support that masks stop the spread of the COVID.
I was just in Denver, and people were wearing masks still in indoor places, and I've seen it in airports. And if you're old and you're sick and all of that, okay, I have no problem with that. But this one particular woman, she had a fluorescent orange one, John. And she was young. So what is wrong with these people? Because again, they only ever read headlines. They're not digging deep like you and I are into the news. So we've got to fight all of this.
Do you not feel like when you see someone wearing a mask today that it's like some kind of a perverse political statement?
Well, what upset me was last summer I was in Brooklyn. I fly to New York a lot, and there was a little kid walking. It was like 100 degrees, and he was 5 with the mask on. And I was like, what mental state is your parent in that you're outside when it's so hot wearing a mask? So these people, and I think that's what we need to work on, John, is how do we convert these people to have a moral compass and reality? Because especially with the Trump derangement syndrome, it's definitely real. They hate him so much that, we had that Senator, was it Murphy, that was kind of like, yeah, Iran, they've got this straight. And he wrote awesome on his X. And then he's like trying to walk it back that it was just sarcasm. But when you have the left not even like supporting our troops, that are in harm's way, and they've forgotten why we're over in Iran. Why are we there? Because these loons want to have, a nuclear weapon and use it on you and me. So it's just, everything's kind of interconnected.
Well, the one thing that I can't really figure out with our narrative on Iran, as you just reflected, it's about their nuclear ambitions.
Yeah.
But I just asked Anthony to find it for me. It was on my desk. It's disappeared. I took it somewhere and didn't bring it back. But I've got 2 pages of very fine print listings of all the state-sponsored terrorist acts where Iran has effectively killed our own servicemen and women.
For the last 50 years.
For the last 50 years. And here it is. It's a full 2 pages. I know you can't read it, but it goes front and back. And when I tell people this, they say, "Oh yeah, I remember that. The 1978, they seized our U.S. embassy, taking 66 diplomats hostage for 444 days." And then you skip down the page, and I'm just skipping over like 10 to get to it, where they went in and bombed our embassy in Beirut with a car bomb, and they killed 23 innocent people, including 2 American service members. then they made another attack in Kuwait, or in Beirut rather, where they killed another 450 U.S. citizens, and the list just goes on and on. They hijacked TWA Flight 847 on its way to Athens to Rome, torturing a U.S. Navy diver before shooting him at point blank range in the head.
We forget these
You
stories.
forget them, but they go
We
on
forget these
for
stories.
2 pages, and there are thousands of American people that they've killed. Now, look, the thing is, and I don't know why Trump is focusing on the nuclear and enrichment of uranium, because our intel tells us that that's true. But I'm not sure that the American people fully buy into that, because you've got this guy who was at the, National Security Council, what was his name, that just resigned 2 weeks ago, and saying that he couldn't support Trump because there was not clear evidence of uranium being enriched to the point that we should have invaded them. I don't need to know the answer to that. All I need to do is read this 2 pages of 50-year atrocities where
they were just about to
cowardly are
kill
killing us.
10 Iranian women that their pictures have been all over X and on the news.
And what about
and Trump said, and so now they're not doing it, thank God. And I hope
But
they
you know
don't
why?
do it.
Because
but who does this?
because they respect Trump, and they know when he says they're going to bomb the hell out of him that he's not messing around. But what about the 43,000 of their own people that they have killed just this calendar year?
They're psychotic.
We don't have to agree on uranium being enriched. That's all you know. And these are certified, indisputable. You can't argue with the list. And that's provocation enough to go in and neutralize them. And in short, I fully support the war. And where in the hell are Tucker, Alex Jones, Candace, and Megyn Kelly coming from? What's the matter with these
I think
people?
we need to follow the money. I've scratched them off my list. I've said this on my show. I'm done with them. Again, America first. I mean, when you talk to leftists, they're mad that we're doing this in Iran. But, Trump is the first president with cojones, I like to say, and a backbone.
In the last 50 years. Even Reagan, who I loved, he had every justification to go in and bomb the hell out of Iran when they released the hostages after a year and a half. Of course, he was a little indebted to him because he probably would not have become president were it not for the hostage situation. I mean, let's just be real. I love Ronald Reagan. I named my dog after him. But I call balls and strikes. We should have neutralized them 50 years ago when we had every right to do it in real time.
Well, and think about those poor people. They don't have any weapons, and going back to Corolla de Virginia, she wants to limit what you have access to, raise the buying a gun to 21. It's so important that we have our weapons, and Iran's one of the reasons why. But I do feel, John, we're going to need a little bit of boots on the ground. As a retired military officer, we've got to go after that enriched uranium and end it for once and for all. Because if we're not going to take out, how many of these Iranian mullahs have we taken out? 40 plus at this point.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that in our history where we go in and wipe out the leadership of our enemy? We didn't kill Hitler. We didn't kill the president of.
But they're still not getting it. They're still not getting it. And I saw before we came on that Iran was so proud. They collected their first toll of somebody trying to go through the Strait of Hormuz. But Trump came out today and said, we're going to start bombing. We're blowing up people that are putting any mines down. We've pretty much destroyed them. But think about with Venezuela, we were blowing up stuff, which of course that the left was like, how dare you, as they clutched their pearls. And, Trump is the man of the century, I think, just how he cares about the world, and he gets no credit. He gets no credit, John.
Well, he does with you and me and our listeners. And I think, Richard Nixon talked about that great silent majority. And I do think that that's still a reality today, and it gives me hope. because 77 million Americans voted for him, less than the 80 million that voted for Biden.
Was fake.
Where did they go in the 24 election, by the way? Anyhow, the fact is, I think that people do secretively and quietly approve and support Trump. It's just the left loonists that control the media that leave you with the impression that people don't support Trump. But you and I certainly do. And I don't support him because I'm trying to suck up to him. I support him because I believe in what he's doing. Like neutralizing this 50-year threat to the world, not just the Americans, but the entire world. And they're lunatics, and they ask for punitive measures, and now they're finally getting it. And so...
blow up anything that's in that Strait of Hormuz. We've been boarding some of the ships that, are pretending to be somebody else's ship. But again, follow the money. And they're saying that Iran is losing $300 to $500 million a day in their oil, bank coffers. So will the mullahs finally feel the pain and knock it all off and come to the table? Because, they're going to want their money too. But I honestly feel we've got to get the enriched uranium, and I wish we would take more of these people out. I mean, there's, how many do you have to take out? They're all crazy.
They are. Well, how are we going to find that uranium? Do you think we know where it is?
Well, Israel's been such a strong ally with us. I mean, think about how when these Iranians met and, the building where they took out a bunch of these leaders, I bet they know where it is. And even if it's down deep under the earth, we've got to get it back. We can't ever leave this with these people.
Why don't we just bomb the hell out of the
Well,
reserve?
They're saying it's really like are you talking the oil or where the uranium is?
The uranium.
Supposedly it's like way deep under the ground, and our the bombs that our aircraft that are phenomenal can't reach where it's located. Possible. They're saying, and of course the extraction is not going to be an easy job anyways, but none of this is easy, and we've got to end it, and that's what I've told people is think about it, because we learned in this conflict that they have ballistic missiles that supposedly they didn't have, John. And so if you're
they
in
can
Paris
reach America
or London or wherever, they can reach you. So we just think if they had one of these nukes, I mean, I'm sure they'd use it on Israel already, but it is funny because I think there's some goodness that has come out of this. Like the UAE has been struck like 2,800 times now. And so they're kind of like warming up to, we're building stronger allies in the Arab region. So that to me is one of the good things that's come out, because not all Arabs are crazy like these Iranians, So I think there's going to be some goodness that comes out of this with our relationships.
Here's the one thing, and I don't know, I haven't listened to everything that Tucker has said. He has really disappointed me.
Oh yeah.
In recent weeks, but I'm still maintaining an open mind to listening to what he's saying. He doesn't acknowledge this list. I think that's where, he is.
Okay, a man of faith doesn't acknowledge all of these Americans that have been killed.
Well, I don't know. I don't even know if he stopped and thought about it. I want to send this.
Well, he
to
better
him.
Watch this show, because
he should watch this show.
Yeah.
And he's just across the state here,
he
so maybe he
punch.
will. But but the one thing that he is saying that I do think about.
Okay.
And I'm getting on very thin ice with hot skates here. I should care, but I don't, because I think it's legitimate. Israel seems to have a disproportionate voice in our country and over our policies. And that is a concern.
Well, that
of
is
mine.
what the left says all the time. And they're saying that Israel's in charge of this war. And then Trump, I just saw a tweet saying, No, he's in charge. But look who stepped up. Who's had our back in that region fighting this conflict? The Europeans are a joke. NATO's been a joke, and I saw that in London the last 2 days, the French and the UK have come together because they're trying to. We've got to be able to navigate the region. Well, where have you been? Where have you been?
Oh, it
You're
makes
weaklings.
me sick.
And I'm all
they
about.
would not exist today were it not for the United States of America.
Yes, exactly.
And we have been fighting the war in the Ukraine almost by ourselves.
Yeah.
They've paid lip service to it. They've offered up some munitions and stuff, but they're not real players in that war. We're there defending their flanks. And then when they have an opportunity to demonstrate their loyalty to us, it's like, nah.
No, they've been awful because I've always been, having served, I lived in Panama and Germany and Japan. I've always been about, let's have bases. My sister and brother-in-law were in the army, lived, stationed in Korea a couple times. I like having bases in foreign countries. My dad was a defense attaché in Madrid during Desert Storm. And I like having these bases out there where we can stop, with our airplanes, air refuel.
100%.
Launch tool is where they take anybody that is physically hurt. There, we've got a huge hospital there. But I don't know, and I know Secretary Rubio is going to examine this when this conflict's over. John, they haven't had our back. The PM of Spain is a complete flaming liberal. We've got Morón Air Base. We've always been able to land our bombers there, and we've got the Navy down south at Rota. I don't know. Maybe it's time to pull chocks and get out of these countries, because why are we there if we can't even stop at Rota with our airplanes that is halfway to the desert?
You're exactly right. So, but let's don't jump off this Israel subject for a moment.
Okay.
2% of our population are Jews. 30% of the wealth in our country is held by Jews. They're very smart, industrious people. I don't hold that against them at all. I think it's remarkable that they are so successful. But 85% of our media is controlled by Jews. And Netanyahu has made, I think, 8 trips now to the United States since in the last 12 months. And we know that we highly suspect, we know Ghislaine Maxwell's father was Mossad. We suspect that Ghislaine Maxwell may well be Mossad. We suspect that Jeffrey Epstein may have been working for both Mossad and the CIA, and maybe MI6 as well. I am concerned about, I've encouraged, I cheer our support of Israel, 100%, period. End of paragraph. But I don't cheer a disproportionate say in our own internal and external policies. And the thing that's most disturbing to me is that I've been a student of the Kennedy assassination for 63 years now, since I was home from the 4th grade the day he was assassinated. And it never made sense to me, the official narrative. I always had questions about it. Now I fully believe that Johnson ordered the hit, that Allen Dulles carried it out, and Hoover covered it up. But now we're learning that a lot of the redacted material in the JFK files that have been released are believed to contain the name of Israel. And that is very concerning to me. Meanwhile, Charlie Kirk had started to speak out about Israel and their disproportionate influence in our country, and he ends up dead. I don't believe the narrative about Tyler Robinson for a second. First of all, a 30-06 would have left traumatic injury to the back of Charlie's head. The bullet didn't even penetrate his neck, which Chris Marchinson says is the softest tissue in our body. And then Robinson was supposed to have assembled the gun on the roof, disassembled the gun on the roof, and sprinted off the roof, and then fled into the woods where he put it back together and left it sitting pristinely on a blanket. It's just BS. And it makes me mad. I mean, they stole an American treasure from us. And I want to know who did it. I am
Do you
sick
think
of being
Israel?
lied to.
I don't want to think it's Israel.
I'm not saying that they did, but they are on my list of suspects, as is the deep state, as is maybe people within Turning Point. I don't know who did it, but I definitely don't believe that it was Tyler Robinson. You know, there were financial improprieties that Charlie wrote a memo about 8 days before he was killed, ordering a Doge-style audit of Turning Point's books. He gets assassinated, and Erica cancels the audit. And then you've got all these people in Turning Point say, shut up, move on. Stop asking questions.
Go to Butler. They cremated
Totally.
Nobody secured the roof. I mean, you know, I don't know. When I was a protocol officer, we had the president of China came to Langley Air Force Base, and I worked with the Secret Service.
Yeah.
And you're thinking of all of these things. Plus, I was dealing with the press you had press on the back of this airplane, and the press that I had come to the base. The security measures of dogs and checking things,
Yes.
and and I'm not a FBI agent or whatever, but I know what securing an area is. And, you know, there's so many questions, you know, and that's why I do worry about Trump every day.
I do too.
I have to say, because when the whole world hates you, to include your own left, you know, it's not good.
Well, that raises a very important question in my mind that I think about a lot. If one person on earth had reason to want to know who took a shot at Donald Trump in Butler, I would think it would be Donald Trump. But you don't hear him talking about it. Yeah. And actually, I saw an interview with him a few months ago, and someone asked him about it, and he said, yeah, I've talked to my people, and they've told me that it was that kid. And so I guess that's what we have to accept. And I was like, really? Dude, come on. They tried to kill you, and you're going to let them off the hook? So I think.
Well, maybe he knows stuff. It would be so jarring if we knew the left was doing this. It's sort of like the tease now that they're going to release all this UFO stuff. You know.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So I'm like, okay.
So here's a theory that I've contemplated.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, I think that Trump. Well, you know when Dan Bongino went into the FBI?
I was so excited.
I know, me too, and I was so disappointed with the results. But he said that he would never be the same. That the things that he saw, the things that he learned, shocked him to his very core. There was also an article that said that they had to recruit outside of Washington 50 trusted FBI agents who would guard and protect Bongino at his own desk, sitting in FBI headquarters.
Yeah, it's
now,
scary.
if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, I don't know what does. And so I've got this suspicion, and it's just a suspicion. It's kind of a working theory, and I don't even know what probability to ascribe to it right now, but that maybe Donald Trump lives in a reality that we don't understand and appreciate. And it almost, you could infer that, yeah, I know who tried to kill me, and we've reached an unholy alliance. I'm not going to rat you out, but you're not going to kill me.
Well, maybe the book will be written in 25 years.
Yes, no, it'll be 60. Well, with the internet, it could be 25.
Well, I do care for the man. It's just, oh my goodness, wow. You know, he's given all, and then his family's continually attacked, you know. And then when I was on the plane with the liberal, she's like, oh my gosh, his family's just been so enriched by this. They were already rich.
They have become more enriched. But let me tell you the difference between them and Hunter Biden. What value did Hunter Biden produce for his inordinate money that he got? What value did Jared Kushner provide when he's offering to rebuild
he's a
Gaza?
Grifter for Biden.
Yeah, but Kushner is putting his own capital at risk. And if you were going to invest money, location, would you pick Gaza right now? Yeah. I think you could make an argument that it is as much of a humanitarian cause as it is a entrepreneurial venture.
Well,
so
don't you love Jared
vast
Kushner
difference.
though, John? Because he's kind of always under the radar,
Yeah.
where Hunter Biden never was. Plus, I'm still scarred from seeing him in his underwear, with the prostitute. I just complete trailer trash where Jared Kushner is doing this, because I think he has a love of country as well. And that's the thing when people say that Trump doesn't like Jewish people and his own son-in-law is Jewish, that one makes me laugh too.
Well, I don't know how they could ever make that statement. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which every president before him had promised to do and didn't.
Never done.
And Jared went, and you would have to think that when they're over there, they're risking harm to themselves. You have to worry about retaliation.
On that note, did you see, I'm sure, because Alan Dershowitz now has come out and changed to the Republican Party because he cannot stand how the Democrats are so anti-Semitic. And of course, he said, I'm still, pro-abortion and all the things that come along. But he said he's going to fight tooth and nail, go donate, write checks. He's going to give speeches for Republicans because they've become too insane, the left for him.
Yeah.
So that was a huge score, I thought.
That's another working theory that I've been thinking about. Rather than good and evil, it's complementary. But I just wonder if all the strife and the turmoil that is happening in our country right now, as illustrated by my map, if it's not foreign influence that is creating the strife. I mean, to me, it is so bizarre to say that little boys and little girls should have to use the same bathroom, that nobody in their right mind could possibly believe that unless they were trying to get Americans mad at each other and boys playing women's sports. That just triggers the hell out of me. It just makes me mad.
Me too.
But I wonder if we're not going for the bait, and if it's not intentional to try and split our country down the middle so it won't be so hard for China to come in and swoop in, and one day we see the CCP flag flying over the nation's capital. I think you got to be open to the possibility that is possibly what's going on here.
Well, I think you're right. I've had a lot of China experts on my show. It's often funny too because I always have tech issues when a China expert comes on my show. but when you talk to China experts, John, they all say China's the number one threat. It's not Russia.
Yes.
It's China. And then what also bothers me too is when I think we've had 1.5 million babies born with this surrogacy kind of, or you're 9 months pregnant and you have your baby in America, that we're building this other class of society. And I mean, down by Tampa, MacDill Air Force Base, we just had they were born of Chinese parents. Like they dropped off, they were trying to blow up the visitor center of MacDill Air Force Base.
Good Lord.
So that's a recent thing.
Story.
Yeah, that's.
But what's more sinister about it is that they give birth, and then 3 months later, the family picks up and goes back to China.
This is what I'm worried
where
about.
Where they're educated and indoctrinated
to hate
in
America.
Chinese schools, taught to hate America, and then they can re-enter the United States anytime they want to. On a United States passport.
No, this
that
is a concern.
Is scary to me.
This is a concern.
And Peter Schweitzer and Gordon Chang have both highlighted the urgency of this and the seriousness of it. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry we ran out of stuff to talk about, and there have been so many awkward moments of silence during our time together.
Well, you're a true patriot,
today.
John. So thanks for hosting me.
As are you,
show.
But you're the true patriot. You know, I just talk the talk. You walk the walk. You've served in our armed forces and the Air Force, as has your husband.
Under Trump, Obama signed my retirement. You get this beautiful thing, and even as a wife, when my husband retired, I got a wife one, and so I have my officer one, and then I have my wife one signed by Obama. So
well, there's a bit of irony all mixed up in that I think we can actually laugh at and just mock him for having had to sign that piece of paper for somebody who really dislikes him.
Right.
All right, Veronica, thank you so much.
God
Veronica
bless you, John.
Kemney, and she has her own podcast and
TV show and podcast.
Is radio show and podcast. It's called Veronica Live, and she's just across the state. Maybe one day you'll come over and we can do an in-person interview in
I
our
love it.
studio.
I love it. Get that whiskey ready.
Oh, listen, we got some bars in my new house, and we also have some Bone Frog coffee. I don't know if you're familiar with it or
coffee.
not, but
Yeah.
Bone Frog is a coffee company, and they sponsor our studio.
Awesome.
And they give 10% of their profits to Gold Star families.
Love that.
And vets. Tim Cruikshank, who founded the company, was himself a Navy SEAL.
Beautiful.
So, all right, Veronica, best to your husband, and thank you again for your time today, and hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
God bless.